croeso i gyfarfod ein bwrdd. Fel aelod o'r cyhoedd, gallwch fynychu'r cyfarfod i arsylwi. Mae hynny'n golygu y gallwch weld a chlywed y cyfarfod, ond ni chewch gyfrannu. Rydym yn recordio'r cyfarfod a bydd cofnod ohono ar gael ar ein gwefan yn fuan. O ganlyniad, gofynnwn i chi beidio recordio'r cyfarfod os gwelwch yn dda. Welcome to our board meeting. As a member of the public, you can attend the meeting as an observer. That means that you can see and hear the discussion, but cannot participate. We intend to provide a video recording of the meeting, which will be available on the website soon after. For that reason, we ask that you do not record the meeting yourself, please. A'r prif weithredwr ac aelodau gweithredol ac anweithredol o'r bwrdd. And the board chief executive, executive and non-executive board members. Bydd ein cadeirydd dros dro, Stephen Harries, yn agor cyfarfod bwrdd yr ymddiriedolaeth. Our acting chair, Stephen Harries, will open the trust board meeting.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Bore da, and welcome to the November 2024 meeting of the Berlin University NHS Trust Board. For those who don't know me, I'm Stephen Harries, and I'm the Vice Chair. I'll be chairing the board meeting this morning on behalf of Professor Donna Mead, who is unavoidably unable to attend today's meeting. I'm pleased to confirm that the meeting this morning is being live streamed today for those of you joining our meeting remotely. As mentioned in the pre-recording, our proceedings are being filmed or recorded and will be available on the Trust website after the meeting, should members of the public and staff wish to view the recording at their convenience. I would also particularly like to welcome Bethan Davis and Diolch for providing the simultaneous Welsh translation service for this meeting. So for all who have joined the meeting today, a very warm welcome to you all. Croeso pawb. I'll now go straight into the business of the board meeting. So just to confirm the process for asking questions, we'll ask if there are any questions or comments, etc. And I will be asking for endorsement, approval, or noting of various papers. And I would appreciate if you could raise your hand if you're in the room. And for those who have joined us on Teams, if they could raise their hand electronically. I do my best to keep an eye open for hands raised, but there's only so many participants shown on the screen. So if I miss you, I think others will be prompting me if your hand is raised and I missed it. So in terms of welcome and apologies, as I said, I'm the acting chair this morning on behalf of Professor Donna Mead, and I've been made aware of the following apologies. Obviously, Professor Donna Mead, the Trust Chair, sent apologies, as is Sarah Morley, the Executive Director of Organisational Development and Workforce, and also Emma Rees, who is Deputy Head of Internal Audit at the Shared Services Partnership. Are there any other apologies we're aware of that need to be recorded? No? Okay, thank you. So in attendance this morning, I'm also pleased to welcome Katrina February, who is the Audit Lead at Audit Wales, Rachel Hennessy, who is the Interim Director at the Berlin Cancer Centre, Alan Prosser, who's Director of the Welsh Blood Service, Amanda Jenkins, Acting Assistant Director of Workforce, who is deputising for Sarah Morley, Tina Jenkins, who's Head of Quality, Safety and Assurance, who will be attending for item 4.6, and David Cogan, the patient representative. Sian James, who's Head of Research, Development and Innovation, she'll be joining for item 5.2, and Andrew Nash, who's a surveyor at the NHS Wales Shared Service Partnership, who will join during the, I think this is the consent approval section, if required. I think I have welcomed everybody who's present, thank you. So declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest in respect of today's meeting which aren't standing declarations? No, thank you very much. So we'll move now firstly to item 1.4 on the agenda, which is the minutes of the Public Trust Board meeting held on the 26th of September 2024. And the board is asked to confirm whether the minutes of that meeting held on the 26th of September 2024 are an accurate reflection of the proceedings. We're happy to agree those. Seeing nodding heads. Thank you very much. We will come on to one matter arising later in the agenda. That then takes us on action log, which is item 1.5. So I'll take this perhaps in several parts. So there are a number of actions which are marked as closed. So if you have a colour version, they are the items marked in blue. So I'll go through this in stages. So firstly, in respect only of the items which are marked as closed, I'll come back to the other items in a moment, and only in respect of the items which are marked as closed, is the board happy to agree that all of those items be closed, or are there any comments or questions in respect of any of the items marked on the action log as closed? Not seeing any hands up anywhere, so the board agrees those actions as closed. So we then have several other items which are marked either as open, proposed to close, and either have a green status against them or a red status against them. I just want to check, does the board have any questions or comments or queries in respect of the items marked as open at this stage? Andrew, please.
We've got green opens and red opens.
Yeah.
The difference, just to be clear, is what?
Not clear. So
Not clear.
Past the
Is it past the date?
Date.
the red usually means, yes, it's overdue to the original. But there are some, yeah, but the markings aren't consistent. So that is something I've taken back, even regardless of colour.
Yeah.
I don't think we're applying the wording consistently.
Okay. I say, are there any questions, comments or queries in respect of any of the items marked as open? Aaron, please.
Just number 9. I should have proposed to close that one because the wording has been updated as requested.
So this is the performance management framework, like that number 9 you mentioned, yeah. So what's your proposal?
The action's been completed, so it's proposing to close it. You can see the paragraph that was required has been rewritten.
Okay, yeah.
Paragraph point.
Okay, so we're happy to close the action number 9 in terms of the revision of the wording, which has been confirmed as agreed. It's a hand up.
Gareth.
It's Gareth, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's say apologies. I can only see a limited number of screens on the big screen. So Gareth's hand, please. Gareth, please.
Gadeirydd, diolch yn fawr. Mae yna nifer o'r gweithredoedd sydd â dim dyddiad yn ei herbyn nhw, a'r bod y dyddiad gwreiddiol wedi paso yn barod. Felly, enghraifft, un cynta, rhif 1, y dyddiad gwreiddiol oedd yr 10 o fis Gorffennaf, ond does dim dyddiad nawr erbyn pryd mae'r weithred yna yn mynd I gael ei chyflawni. Ac mae hynna'n ymddangos mewn nifer o fannau hefyd.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. So the query is, as you all heard, around the fact the dates, many of them, or several in the past, and yet the action is still open, but the dates haven't been revised to indicate new expected completion date. I don't know whether we need to go through each of these in turn, because Gareth gave us the example of the first one. So I just want to check what's the process here for revising these dates. Clearly we need new target dates if the dates have been passed.
Is it worth doing that outside of the meeting? So we can spend
Yeah, we could spend a long time on it. Yeah, okay.
It's an important point. Make sure they then correct it for the next meeting if that's the case.
Yeah, well, I think what would be helpful is perhaps even without waiting 2 months for the next meeting,
Yeah,
is
outside the meeting.
if we could do it outside the
Yeah.
meeting and circulate the board members an updated action log with revised deadline dates. So I know that that might involve a bit of internal discussion. So I know it's not going to be after the meeting. It might take a little while. If we could arrange to circulate an updated action log with revised realistic deadline dates, that would be helpful. So I want to check, Gareth, would that address your particular concern, or did you want to pursue it any further in this meeting?
No.
Okay,
Na,
thank
popeth
you,
yn
Gareth.
iawn.
Okay, thank you very much. So there's the one issue of the dates being updated. That aside, are there any other comments or queries on the action log? Or are we happy to receive the action log as presented, leave all of the open actions as open? Just want to note there is one action which is numbered as action 8, which is provide update on the current position of risks over 16 a week prior to the board, and then the response we've been provided with is around that being included in the governance section of the cover paper. And at the moment it's a proposed to close. What I'm going to suggest we do is we leave that open until we get to that paper, and the board can take a view at that point. We're satisfied that that action has been closed off. I'm happy to do that. Not seeing any more hands. I'm going to move us on. Thank you very much. So as I said, there is one substantive matter arising, which I think was of sufficient importance to consider in the main business of the meeting. We just want to check if there are any other matters arising, or any other points in relation to the minutes or the action log before I move on. Lauren, you had your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I'm sticking my nose in on a logistics point. So what this seems to be doing is there's only, whatever it is, 7 cameras that can be live at any one time.
Okay, this is on Teams.
Yeah. So I just wonder whether so when we're going through the presentations, whoever's presenting the paper, we can just switch them into being live, should we? We've got the room live, and but the rest of us are off screen.
Just check, can admin not change it to large gallery view? We can't do it.
Yeah,
Could admin?
because it does seem odd that there's only 7 before we go through the hours of this meeting.
Yeah. So who would sort that out?
Alison, I will speak to Alison offline here.
Okay, so Noel will take that offline.
And in the meantime, we'll just switch the presenters manually, should we? Okay.
So I'm just trying to check, because we got 5, 6, 7, 8. I can see 8 individuals on screen. So
We'll work on that as we're doing it now.
Yeah, the ones on the right.
Yeah.
In little, the public can't see those.
Oh, they can't. Okay.
It's just the ones in our red screen. They can
Okay, I
see.
understand. Yeah. Okay. Right, let's see if you can sort that
Yeah,
offline.
can do
Noel, honestly, that would be very helpful. Thank you. So I just want to check. So there's one substantive matter arising, which we're going to take as a matter of business later in the agenda, given its importance. But that aside, are there any other matters arising from the minutes or indeed from the action log that anybody wants to raise before I move on? No, if not, in which case I'm going to move us on to the chair's brief, the chair's report. Obviously, Donna isn't here to answer any questions. I know if you do have any questions or comments on this, then Donna would be happy to deal with those directly outside of the meeting. I'm going to take the report as read, but there are just a couple of items, one of which I want to add or one of which I want to highlight, and I just need to open up my emails to make sure I get this correct. So just one additional item in terms of the chair's report, which Donna's sent me as a late edition, is that Donna's been informed that yesterday that Colonel Simon Lawrence, who works in our radiology department, was presented with the King's Coronation Medal. He was a serving soldier at the time of the coronation, and until very recently he was the commanding officer of 293 Wales Medical Reserve Regiment. Donna wishes to express her personal congratulations to the receipt of that medal to Colonel Simon Lawrence, and she is inviting the board similarly to express our collective congratulations to our new colleagues. So I'm sure the board would like to join me and Donna in doing that. We'll arrange for some note to be sent to Simon. Thank you very much. that was the one, and then the one which is in there as a comment already, which is at item 3.12. So as we all know, next week we'll be looking forward to welcoming the Trust's new Chief Executive. But the Chair and I know all of us will want to record our thanks to Carl James, the interim Chief Executive, for the exemplary way in which he has carried out the role over the past 5 months. It hasn't always been an easy journey, but we've been in very safe hands. And obviously beyond that, I know you in turn, Carl, will be the first to recognise the role and contribution of other colleagues, some of whom are sitting around this table, who've also taken up interim roles and have done a fantastic job in supporting you, supporting the board and supporting the Trust in taking forward the agenda we face during this time of transition. And Donna makes the comment, which you can see we're fortunate to have such skilled individuals working for the Trust. And of course, the NHS is very fortunate to have such skilled individuals. So thank you from Donna. Thank you from me. And I know other colleagues around the room, other board members will want to join me in expressing the thanks to you, Carl, Lauren, Non, and Jazz, and others who've all been involved in interim roles, and I know you'll pass that on to your team. So thank you very much appreciated.
Thanks, Steve.
So beyond that, I don't know if there are any comments or questions, but if so, I'm unlikely to be able to answer them. But if you do have any comments or queries, or make an update on any of the matters there, then obviously feel free to contact Donna directly. That being so, I'll now move us on to the Vice Chair's report, my report, which is obviously much shorter and never as exciting. So I just wanted to check whether anybody had any comments or questions on my report. If not, thank you very much. I'm going to move us on. So that then takes us to item 2.3, which is the Chief Executive's report. So I'll pass across to Carl James, which is there to provide information to the board on a number of key matters for the period September to November 2024, after which, whatever comments you want, Carl, be an opportunity for questions and queries. So
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Again, take the report as read. I mean, there's a lot of important things going on in the last little while, so I won't go over them. I think the one thing I just wanted to highlight really was perhaps as important and one of the most enjoyable bits was the Staff Excellence Awards on the 8th of October, where we all got the opportunity just to stop for an afternoon. And I think just celebrate the amazing efforts, talent and achievements of staff working within the organisation and working with us, and the difference that makes for patients and donors across South East Wales and Wales. So as I said at the time, we don't often get enough time to stop and just to recognise how far we've come as opposed to how far is left to go. But I think that was perhaps one of the most enjoyable afternoons for some time, and I think next year hopefully working to repeat that and probably scale it a bit more as well. And the other thing I just wanted to just respond to your really kind words, just very briefly. I said at the time when I was lucky enough to be appointed, it felt like a real privilege. And I can honestly say the last 5 months really have been that. As always is the case, there's been some easy things and some more tricky things, but that's part of the role, isn't it? But I just wanted to pay particular thanks to the board, but specifically to the exec team, and also to Alan and Rachel and everybody else in the service, because it really has been a pleasure. But I'm also looking forward to David arriving as well, because I think David will add to what we've got and really help us push on to the next level. Is what we want to be. We're ambitious. We want to do good for our patients and our donors. And I think it's really now the next chapter in the organisation's growth. So we're all looking forward to that. And thanks for the opportunity. So I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Very much appreciated. Obviously, just coming back, just a quick comment in terms of the staff awards, as you say, it's an excellent opportunity for us to recognise and, in a sense, in a small way, reward the excellence of the many different activities that are going on across the Trust, almost at every moment of every day. But we'd all agree it was also an excellent opportunity for members of the board to be out there and to meet our colleagues and to see firsthand some of the different things that sometimes we hear discussed or mentioned at this board, but how much more valuable to actually be out there and meet with our colleagues and be able to discuss those things directly with them. So it really was an excellent occasion. Are there any comments or questions for Carl on his report? Lindsay, please.
I just thought it would be useful to hear a little bit more about how the appearance in front of the Public Accounts Public Administration Committee went and what the feedback has been from that meeting.
Yeah, well, perhaps if I kick off, and Lauren and Matt obviously were there, and they did most of the work. So I just, first of all, just to say thanks to Matt and Lauren. I thought were exemplary, and also the work that went behind that, because obviously a lot of effort and energy. And I was laid up in bed for the first part of the week, so I just turned up and just had a little bit. So I think there were 3 or 4 broad areas. The first was sort of technical matters around the procurement. The second then was just a bit of a chronology and so on and so forth. And the third, I think, was more challenging in one respect, Lindsay, because it wasn't a matter for us. You know, we, as I said at the time, we stayed within what we were expected to do in terms of the policy framework, procurement legislation, and the bits I didn't think were appropriate for us to cover some of those issues around some questions around reputationally and a bit broader, which came from one of the members of the committee. But again, what we're doing is operating within the framework which we have to. So that's the first bit. The second bit, and I'll bring Lauren and Matt in then, the feedback has been positive, because I think what was also helpful for us, it was in full public session. And we said all the way along, we weren't there to defend what we've done, we were there to explain what we've done and how we've gone about it. So I think it was helpful to have it in full public, because there's been an awful lot of noise and concerns. And the third bit, I think, is that hopefully now it enables us to push on. You know, it's not going to go away because there's still some BBC queries come in, but I genuinely think that we now need to get on and focus on what's to come in terms of the good progress we've made on site. As I said at the committee, the really important thing was sometimes get lost why we're doing this. And this is a really important piece of the jigsaw for cancer services in South East Wales. And we want to get back to focusing on that. And Jazz and I were just talking briefly this morning about quality of care, clinical outcomes, sustainability. And that gets lost in that part of the conversation, but it's almost why are we doing this? Just important we can get back to there. But that was my quick reflection. I do want to bring Lauren in because Lauren was amazing. She, knew it inside out, back to front. So I just want to bring perhaps Lauren and Matt in with some reflection. Then maybe we can take any questions.
Thank you, Carl. So, yeah, the process that we went through as a board and as a Transforming Cancer Services Scrutiny Committee, over the couple of years from when we first understood there were these legal cases and the due diligence that was followed, was actually quite straightforward to explain, because, and so as I said in Scrutiny Subcommittee last week, so thank you to everyone around the table in that committee and in the board, because of all the work that we had done as an organisation and in the scrutiny of that as a board was robust. And so, as I say, it was then a straightforward task of explaining that to the committee. So thank you to everyone. As Carl said, raise this in AOB just so everyone's aware, there's TV coverage of this on Sunday on the BBC, and we are on multitasking today and on the handling of that, and they've gone to Sasir, Kajima directly, DLA, us, in terms of opportunity to comment before that programme. So we're coordinating the various steps and the handling of the actual coverage on the day. So we expect it to be referencing us, but also on the wider point, as Carl said, around the certain views that some of the members of the committee have around the whole procurement policy. Yeah, but thank you to everyone.
My apologies, Lindsay. I should have said at the start of the meeting that I was going to kept this update under AOB. So I just want to reassure you that there wasn't going to be any discussion about it. But on reflection, this seems an ideal spot, actually, on reflection. So thank you. But just to reassure you, we were going to have that update under AOB.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Mark.
No,
sorry, yeah, Mark, you were there as well.
A slightly different aspect as well, which is also important around the normal capital procurement matters as well. Not only just got a big chunk of money there as well, which seems to have got lost in the detail.
I suppose it's not a lot more to add, but the whole point I think was to provide the committee and the public with assurance around that we followed procurement regulations and the law, which we had, which was, if you actually listen to it, it's quite repetitive because we just had to keep reassuring them what we've done is the right thing and we followed the process. One of the key things they did ask about was shared services and their involvement on the procurement. And so we had to explain that we had two elements of the procurement, which was the MIM procurement part of the hospital, but also the business case includes a whole load of new equipment. Use the right experts for the right bit of procurement. So the MIM procurement, DLA Piper, the experts in the field. Shared services are not being involved in MIM procurement, private public partnership procurements at that point. DLA had been involved in developing the MIM guidance and all the detailed work and build up. So it was a natural transition. Sensible to be procured the best expert advice there. What I pointed out is we were using shared services in their field of expertise in buying NHS equipment. So they've been doing for years. Now we have more distinction that we.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we could have a much longer conversation if we had time, but what I will say, obviously, is a recording of the meeting is available for all public, all members of the board and the trust to view. And I would encourage everybody to view that because it's obviously a very important session. But what you will also discover is obviously that the Public Accounts and Public Administration Committee did a very rigorous and very thorough job of examining this matter by questioning the colleagues, as they should do, quite rightly so. That's their role, and they did it extremely well. So obviously it was an opportunity for us, as Carl says, to explain the position and the process, and that was obviously something the trust actually welcomed. So it's there on public record for all to see. So thank you very much for that. Any more comments or questions on that particular update? If not, thank you very much. I will move us on now. So we're now moving, there's no items under integrated governance. We're going to move directly into the quality, safety and performance section of the meeting or the agenda. So 4.1 is the Trust Risk Register, which includes an update on the current November 2024 position. So I'm going to invite Non, as the Interim Director accounting for the Risk Register during the reporting period, to take us through the papers, please. So we've got the Risk Register, we've got the cover paper, plus then marked as Appendix 2 in our papers is the Risk Register itself.
Yes.
So thank you, Non.
I'll speak in Welsh, if okay, just to give you a fair warning. Okay, diolch yn fawr. Fe gadwa I hyn yn fyr. Mae'r papur yn crynhoi nid yn unig y sefyllfa o ran ein cofrestr risg dros y cyfnod diweddar. Mae hefyd yn cyfeirio at sgyrsiau sydd wedi cael eu cynnal mewn amryw fyrddau a phwyllgorau dros y cyfnod ynglyn â'r gofrestr. Dwi'n gobeithio bod hynna'n ddefnyddiol I chi gyd. Mae'r papur sy'n cyflwyno y gofrestr hefyd am y tro cyntaf yn cyfeirio at grynodeb ar ddau gategori o risg mae'r bwrdd gweithredol wedi canolbwyntio arnyn nhw dros y cyfnod mwy diweddar. Dwi'n siŵr bydd Ann yn hapus I ateb yn y gwestiynau ar y narratif sydd wedi cael ei gyflwyno, ond mae hwnna'n cael ei gyflwyno mewn ymateb I sylwadau gan y bwrdd yn y gorffennol ynglyn â'r angen I ystyried y risg ar lefel fwy strategol. Y ddwy gategori ydy ein gwasanaethau SACT a hefyd y gweithlu meddygol. Fi'n siŵr fydd pawb o gwmpas y bwrdd yn hapus i ateb unrhyw gwestiynau sydd gennych chi ar hynny. Dwi'n meddwl mai dyna'r cyfan yna i nodi am nawr, ond dwi'n gobeithio hefyd bod yr drafodaeth neu'r cyflwyniad ar y drafodaeth yn y pwyllgor QSP ar ddechrau'r ddogfen yn ddefnyddiol, achos fe gafwyd sgwrs gynhwysfawr iawn ynglyn â'r gofrestr risg yno. Diolch yn fawr.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much. So, inviting questions and comments on this, so I'll hand over. I think firstly, it's Vicky, please. So I'll come to Gareth second, please. Vicky.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate Non's last point, that QSP, as always, had a good detailed discussion on the risk register and picked up the particular points. I think what's great for the Trust Board to gain assurance on is Non's summary in this paper nicely articulates the discussion that we had and some of the key points. And we haven't had that much detail to the board papers before. So I thank Non for that, because that shows that link between our discussions and what the Trust Board need to be assured on. But also, if you look into the highlight paper that we'll come to later from QSP, that triangulates with that discussion. So I just wanted to make that comment and thank Non for that.
Okay, thank you very much, Vicky. That's very helpful. Gareth, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Dau gwestiwn os gais, gwelwch yn dda. Y cynta ar dudalen 7 o 10, ac ar ben y dudalen, mae yna sylw ynglyn â Datix Web a Datix Cymru, ac mae penderfyniad i y cyrff iechyd yw pa un o'r hynny, y bwrdd iechyd, pa un o'r rheini maen nhw'n mynd i ddefnyddio. Ac o'n i jyst yn meddwl os ydy ni yn Felindre wedi penderfynu p'un ni'n defnyddio Datix Web neu Datix Cymru. Ac na i aros fyna am funed i gael ateb i'r cwestiwn yna cyn mynd mlaen i'r ail gwestiwn.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. So you said this is the top of page 7, the dashed points there. The second of those around the choice of product within Datix. So do we have a view within the trust yet on this? I'm conscious we've got a little bit of time.
Yeah, so I'll answer in English. The simple answer is we're still looking at this at the moment. There's an awful lot of internal discussion going on right now about this. We need to present a paper for EMB discussion so that we can actually consider the pros and cons, the benefits and challenges of using a new system. But we are clear now that we're not quite in the position we were 6 months ago, where a decision was as imminent as it was then. So we have some time to consider, but we do need to consider thoroughly based on our understanding of how we are managing risk within the organisation currently. So it is a decision EMB will consider very soon before it goes through further governance if required.
Okay, thank you. I will come to you in a moment, Gareth. Okay. Oh, sorry, let me come back to you to ask, do you have any follow-up question on your first question? Because Andy's also got a question on the response. So if I'll pause you a moment for your second question, but if I go to, you had your hand up?
Yeah, sure. So this is on the risk register itself.
All right, sorry, I thought you were going to ask a follow-up.
Sorry.
No.
So go to Gareth.
I'll go through the sequence. Sorry, I misunderstood that. Sorry, Gareth, question number 2, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Mae hyn yn dangos ar dudalen 8 o 10, ac yn yr ail baragraff, mae yna osodiad fod y rheolwr yn mynd i cael adolygiad o'r risgs o dan yr lefel o risk appetite. Ac o'n i jyst yn eisiau gwybod pryd bydd hwnna yn digwydd, os gwelwch yn dda.
Thank you.
Diolch Gareth, mae hwnna'n gwestiwn amserol iawn oherwydd mae yn bwynt gweithredol ar action log y pwyllgor archwilio hefyd i ni gwblhau'r gwaith hwn. Mae Mel eisoes yn wedi dechrau ymhela'r gwaith yma ac ar hyn o bryd dwi'n meddwl mae beth yn ni'n ystyried wneud i dweud tuag at diwedd mis Ionawr y bydde'r gwaith yna edrych ar yr categorïau o'r risg yn glir i ni erbyn hynna. Mae'n waith eitha sylweddol i yngymryd ac beth ni'n gobeithio cael o'r pwyllgor archwilio yw dealltwriaeth gwell o'r hyn fydde'r darn o waith yna yn ei gyflawni, hynny ydi beth yw'r wybodaeth mae'r pwyllgor angen o'r darn penodol yna o waith. Ond ni wedi dechrau gwneud gwaith sgop ar hwnna nawr. Nid yw'n darn bach o waith.
Gret. Na, dwi'n deall. Diolch yn fawr, Non.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you. So, Andrew, with apologies for the misunderstanding, you're allowed pass across yourselves.
Thanks to the administrator himself, and I'm not directly involved in this, but I'm very pleased to see it improving every time we see it. And actually, what's nice to see is inherent rating to current rating, and numbers are moving, and there's a time scale in the sense of when the particular risk opened. The third number, of course, is the target rating, and again, it's probably quite difficult, and probably each one has a different. But it'd be nice to have a sense of the time scale by which we get to that point, because this is, it might be a year, it might be 5 years, hopefully not 5 years, but that sort of sense of when that might be achieved would be very helpful, and sort of further iteration in my mind that would really, I'd find that very helpful.
Yeah, that's good. Very, very helpful thought.
We'll discuss that as an executive team.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Diolch.
Even if it's not maybe within a parameter of a sort of rather than a specific month or something. But
we're projecting. I understand that.
That'd be very helpful.
Yeah.
Good point. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Are there any more comments or questions on the report before I sum up? No, thank you very much. So just to confirm, obviously the report shares the current extract of risk registers for risk scoring 12 and above, or in safety and 15 and above for all other domains. And it allows the trust board to have effective oversight and assurance of the way in which risks are being reported and managed across the trust, in addition to our ongoing activity related to the status of the risks and the mitigation. So there are 3 things we're asked to do, but before I want to move on to those, I just recall, of course, that we do have a reference back to the action log. So if you remember, back in the action log, action number 8, there was a proposal to close that action, and the action related to the providing an update on the current position of risk over 16 a week prior to the board, with the response being that would be provided in the governance section of the cover paper in future. So I just need to get a sense from the board whether this can be closed, in the sense that we actually had an update on the current position of risks over 16 sufficiently covered off in the covering papers. I'm personally not sensing we have.
Yeah, okay. I think I would, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Gareth, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Ac mae'n flin dy fi. Dwi am fynd nôl cam os gai i'r atodiad i'r papur. Ac nes i sylweddoli'r pwynt pan o'ch chi'n sôn am y risgiau gyda sgôr yn uwch nag 1 ar 15. Dwi'n edrych ar dudalen 1 o 8 o'r atodiad, ac enghraifft yr risg gynta fyna sydd gyda sgôr o 1 ar 15 ar y funud, ac wedyn ni yn y golofn ar y llaw dde, mae'r diweddariad, dyddiad y diweddariad yw y 12fed o Fedi. Ac mae jyst yn ymddangos i fi, dylen ni fod yn cael diweddariad yn mwy diweddar na 2 fish yn ôl, ynglyn â risg sydd â sgôr o 1/15 iddi. Ac mae'n clymu fewn i'r weithred na yn y log gweithredoedd. Dwi'n meddwl y pwynt o'ch chi'n codi.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. Yeah. So I suppose the first thing just to establish is in terms of this is a good example, isn't it? Its first risk curve, where Gareth highlighted the date in the far right column, progress is recorded as of 12th of September 2024, and there are 3 paragraphs underneath. So the implication is all 3 paragraphs relate to that date. So I don't know whether the assumption is they all relate to the 12th of September, but there's a possibility that they are each sequential updates, but we haven't added the date of the further update. I don't know. So do we, Anne, please?
So the actions have been updated more recently. I appreciate that we didn't include the dates, so apologies for that. The cover paper refers to this and some other SACT risks. And points us to the SACT improvement plan, which is a very, very large piece of work that's been going on since January in the Trust. And there are a number of different initiatives within that and actions within that that will play into the management of this risk. And that means there are meetings weekly about the SACT improvement plan in one way, shape or form. It obviously reports into SACT Gold and onto EMB. So it is very high up on the agenda. But I absolutely take the point about the date.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's, obviously the misunderstanding is self-evident otherwise in the absence of dates. So obviously an important question here, Gareth. We'll need these dates, or we'll need these sections reviewed to just check what dates are missing. And obviously that can be updated, but of course this does tie back to the earlier, immediately prior conversation on the action log itself. Before we come to that, I just want to get Vicky's comment, please.
I think it's just to reiterate that we had a detailed discussion in QSP about the risks that are 16 and above. I think the important thing is about getting assurance at board level of the detailed work that's been undertaken, because whilst we were reassured that the exec team had reviewed in detail the risks, there were some gaps in the information that we received at QSP, which they were taken away to make sure that that was updated. So the timeliness in terms of Gareth's point is really important. What we also discussed, which is important for the board to know, is where there's a score of 20, which was around the dietetic vacancies, then that's really important that we discuss that to understand the reality of that risk and actually what's been done about it. So I think the important point for the board and for execs to consider is how we have that detailed summary of actions being taken to this point so that we can actually seek that assurance. I understand the governance cycle and the papers are going through all due governance, but I think there is a need to be able to provide that up-to-date information.
Thank you. So just trying to unpack some of that. So I think what you described to us, Vicky, is in a sense a slightly more comprehensive review of the recent updates on these key risks going through QSP, which is obviously a very important function of it. So in terms of the action log, Lindsay, sorry.
It's just a practical suggestion which can make it be a lot easier to be able to kind of note more immediately what the update is, and that would be for the most recent update to be in red. Or it just makes it so much easier to pick up on. Great.
Okay, well, that's very helpful as well. Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah. So just coming back, mostly keen what we're going to do with this entry in the action log. I'm sensing actually that the action as recorded in a sense partly addresses what we were hoping to achieve, but I think, Vicky, your comments have helpfully summarised the additional step in the process, which is a more detailed review by QSP. So my thoughts on this, which I'll share with the board, is maybe we just need an extra line in the action log in terms of the update, just to record the fact that that this more detailed review takes place in QSP as part of the normal governance cycle, And if the board is happy with that, then I think we could actually move to close this action down. But obviously I want to be guided by the board on this. But certainly we will take considerable assurance from QSP and your chairing of that, Vicky. So that is a way forward. Lauren, please.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I'm very happy for the action to be closed because of the work that we've heard about being taken forward both by QSP and in terms of the framework work through audit committee. So I feel assured that it's taken forward in the way it should be.
Okay, so thank you, Gareth, please.
Diolch Cadeirydd. Rwy jyst yn edrych ar beth oedd y weithred yn y rhif 8 ac beth oedd yn dweud oedd provide update on current position of risks over 16 a week prior to board ac yr argraff rwy'n gael o hynna oedd fod hwnna i fod yn broses oedd yn digwydd cyn bob cyfarfod bwrdd ac mae'r dyddiad yn y golofn yn gweud weithred ar 20 o fis Tachwedd and going forward. Felly, be dwi'n feddwl dyn ni eisiau yw diweddariad ynglyn â'r risgau yna sy'n â sgôr yn uwch na 1 ar 15 ymlaen llaw o gyfarfod pob bwrdd oherwydd fydd y gofrestr risg sy'n dod i'r cyfarfod bwrdd ddim digon diweddar yn rhoi'r wybodaeth cyfredol.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. Yeah. Lauren, please.
A dwi'n mynd i mateb yn Gymraeg i Gareth. Dwi'n meddwl mae'r her i ni, Gareth, yw sicrhau bod gennym ni, be fyddwn ni'n gweud yn Saesneg, yn gyfyn position ar hwnna o ran y wybodaeth sydd yn dod drwyddo gan yr SLTs yn y gwasanaeth gwaed ac yn y gwasanaeth canser, yn ogystal â rhoi cyfle i'r bwrdd gweithredol i nodi unrhyw sylwadau pellach ar dwi'n meddwl beth yw'r gair Saesneg am y Gymraeg am position, ymddiheuriadau, ar y position hwnnw hefyd. Wedyn, dwi'n meddwl mai dyna'r her i ni gyda bod wythnos o flaen llaw, a dyna pam dwi'n meddwl mae'r drafodaeth yn QSB mor eithriadol o ddefnyddiol i ni oherwydd mae yn rhoi y cyfle i nid yn unig y bwrdd gweithredol ond hefyd aelodau annibynnol i ystyried y sefyllfa fwy diweddar. Dyna pam dwi wedi rhoi yr ymdrech fewn i grynhoi y drafodaeth yn QSB hefyd achos mae hwnna wedyn yn wybodaeth sydd yn caniatáu y bwrdd pan mae'n dod at ei gilydd i ystyried y sefyllfa mwyaf diweddar o safbwynt llywodraethiant. Dwi'n meddwl mai dyna'r her sydd gennym ni. Dwi'n deall yr egwyddor o gael sefyllfa y mwyaf diweddar wythnos o flaen llaw cyfarfod bwrdd. Ond dwi'n meddwl bod y narratif yn y papur cyflwyno yn rhoi diweddariad mwyaf diweddar posibl i ni mewn modd sydd yn rhoi cyfle i gydweithwyr i rhoi y sicrhad bod y drafodaeth ddilys wedi cymryd lle.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I just want to check, Gareth, if you've got any either comment or question in response to that.
Rwy'n deall y pwynt mae non yn neud fod ni eisiau cael diweddariad sydd wedi bod trwy'r broses. Ond ran ni, rwy'n gobeithio bydd y nifer o risgau dyn ni'n sôn amdanyn nhw sydd yn y categori yma sydd yn uwch nag 1 ar 15, fydd ddim llawer ohonyn nhw ac dwi ddim yn siŵr faint o waith fyse na i grynhoi rhywbeth ynglyn â rheini a'i anfon allan i'r bwrdd ymlaen llaw. Achos heblaw hynny, dyn ni'n dibynnu ar y papur cyflwyno bod hwnnw wedi cael ei ddiweddaru i adlewyrchu y sgwrs gymrodd lle yn yr QSB, cyfarfod QSB, ac dwi ddim yn gwybod os ydy yna wastad yn gyflawn neu'n gywir.
Thank you, Gareth. I got several hands. I've got some thoughts on this myself, but I don't know the sequence of. Oh yes, I do. Remember, first one is Anne, please.
So I'm happy to take an action for both WBS and BCC, and we can separate out the risks that are over 16. We can put a narrative into the cover paper, which the board obviously will receive a week before the board, and I can ask both of our operation and SLT teams to have a specific conversation at the meeting they hold to draw out the issues regarding the risks that are 16 and above. Each risk is discussed at those meetings, but we can address it. I will filter through. I will have a specific section of the board paper, which obviously will through some of the board. If that provides the information and satisfies the action from earlier.
Thank you, Anne. That's very helpful. Was Alison? Or I'll take Lindsay next. I'll come to Alison then. So Lindsay, please.
I think just to add to that, I think it's really important that we kind of follow our governance framework and be really clear about delegation to this, and the terms of reference for QSP. Absolutely take Gareth's point about the board need to be assured, but I think that should be by and large the process by which we get assurance. I think then if there's going to be anything on updating, it should be exception reporting. I don't see the point in reporting on things that are in steady state, because that is what the governance cycle is there to kind of manage. But then if there's something that is exception that the board should be alerted to, then yes, I could see, and I can see the point for Gareth as well then.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful, Lindsay. And we'll see Alison.
No, that's Lindsay's hand, I think.
Oh, that's Lindsay's hand, is it?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, right. I can see now. Yes, I can see. Okay. So I think that's been very helpful. I think again we can see the I suppose the governance tension here about the value of having the most recent update in terms of this under 16, but also the comments here around we have a process in place, which obviously we need to adhere to a governance process which involves QSP in the main, and then that is fed up into the board. So I think the board wouldn't want a process outside of that process. And I do take your point, Gareth, about having an update a week before, which could be sent out. As Anne has highlighted, the board papers themselves go out the week before. So I think practically, if there was to be any update, it would be better included in the board papers, because then it's a formal thing and it's available publicly and it's part of an agreed process. And I also take your point, Lindsay, that the value in this is to be made aware of matters of escalation to the board, because all of these matters will already be going through QSP. So my sense of this conversation is, in order to progress this, obviously we want to maintain and, if necessary, strengthen the QSP process, but that's where we're going to get our main assurance on these risks. But there may be occasions on which the board needs to know of more recent events in terms of these risks above 16, and that the opportunity to alert the board to those will be by exception within the covering paper of the papers which are sent out at least a week before. So that seems to me a practical and compliant way of doing this without introducing another process outside of our agreed governance processes. Now, obviously, I want to test this with the whole board, and obviously, Gareth, you've raised this particular concern. Hilary has raised it previously, so I just want to make sure the whole board is satisfied on this. But this would be one way of perhaps moving this forward, and we could leave the action open for the board next time around, and just test next time around if the board is satisfied that we've fully completed the action. So can I just check if we're happy to proceed on that basis? And I'm particularly keen to get Gareth's comment, if I may. I'm sure you'll have a comment. Gareth, please.
Diolch Cadeirydd. Rwy'n fodlon gyda'r cynnig ac be dwi'n feddwl dylen yn wneud falle fel o'ch chi'n crybwyll yw cadw'r weithred ar agor am y tro tan y cyfarfod bwrdd nesa jyst i weld os ydy'r broses yn gweithio ac yn fodlon gyda hynna fel ffordd i symud y peth ymlaen.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. That's very helpful. So just to sum that up then, so we're going to leave the action open for the next board meeting, and in terms of the next report, QSP will follow through as normal, but in terms of any, and obviously this is we rely on the exec team to determine this, if there are matters which have arisen more recently in terms of risks over 16, that will be made or drawn to the attention of the board by way of the covering paper, but it will be done by exception, not by routine. Yeah, we're happy with that. Okay, thank you very much. It's been a useful and important discussion. And obviously, we'll look in 2 months' time, we'll return to this particular point in the action log. Thank you for that. So what I need to do before we move on, because I didn't get to the recommendations, is that we're asked to do 3 things. We're asked to note the risks in the quality and safety domain with a score of 12 and above, and risks in other domains with a score of 15 and above. We're secondly asked to note the ongoing development of the trust risk framework, and finally we're asked to note the work underway to improve organisational management of risk reporting. Are we happy to note those 3 things? Yes, thank you very much. That now moves us on to item 4.2, which is the trust assurance framework. We've been asked to note the current status and the ongoing development of the trust assurance framework, and I'm going to hand over to Non Gwilym as the director accountable for the TAF during the reporting period to present this item, and it's to provide the board an opportunity to review the updates to the TAF and the actions planned for the next period. So over to you. I think we've got 2 documents. We've got the covering paper plus the dashboard itself is a set paper in our packs.
Diolch yn fawr. I will present in Welsh. Diolch yn fawr iawn fe gadau hyn yn fyr hefyd. Mae gwaith sylweddol wedi cael ei wneud ar y fframwaith ers cyfarfod diwethaf y bwrdd. Hyd destun yr appendix, sef y gwaith mae fy nghydweithwyr ar y bwrdd gweithredol wedi rhoi mewn i ddatblygu a cynnal y fframwaith dros y cyfnod diweddar, a hefyd ar y papur sydd yn nawr crynhoi y prif newidiadau yn yr appendix mwyn sicrhau bod gennych chi y wybodaeth berthnasol cyn gydnabod sy'n bosibl yn y papur. Dwi hefyd wedi nodi yn yr un modd yn yr ardal llywodraethiant yn y papur y grynodeb o'r drafodaeth yn ystod cyfarfod Strategic Development Committee hefyd, y gwybodaeth. A dwi'n meddwl mai dyna'r oll dwi am ddeud am nawr, ond dwi'n gobeithio mi fydd gen i ddiddordeb i wybod os yw'r grynodeb a'r modd rydyn ni yn nodi yr diweddariad yn y ddogfen ei hun yn goch, yn ddefnyddiol ac yn rhoi wybodaeth angenrheidiol chi fel bwrdd.
Thank you. The last a bit broke up for me in terms of static. I don't. So. I'll be interested to know when.
Oh, right. Okay. If the summary is helpful, and if the way we are noting the changes in the TAF in the appendix in red is also helpful.
Okay. Thank you, Non. So. Thank you very much. So, Vicky first, please.
Thank you. And again, we discussed this in detail in QSP. I think what is great, and I applaud Non and the team for the significant amount of work, and I don't underestimate that's been undertaken to get this current version. I think putting it in red so we can all see what's been updated, to Lindsay's last point, has been really helpful in this, and that shows the shift in terms of actions being taken. The discussion resulted in QSP with the comments that actually where we've updated this, there are actions that have been followed through that should provide the board with assurances and demonstration of more controls in place. And if we use TAF, because I know I've had discussions with Nick about this area, so TAF 7, there's a significant amount of actions being taken. That just needs to populate now into those assurance boxes and the controls. Because I think what we need to move to as a board is particularly the exec leads talking to any queries, because we should be able to see the improved assurances, the improved controls. None needs to step back from talking to this, and actually the executive directors need to be able to pick any questions up from us, because the reality, as we discussed in the last board, is about how we're managing the risks against the delivery of our strategic objectives. That's the key bit for the board, but I applaud the work that's been undertaken to get us into a better position. So thank you, Non, and obviously recognise the ongoing work that we're doing with the TAP as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. So again, a helpful reminder, obviously it's been scrutinised in some detail already by QSP before coming to the board. So I'll open up for questions and comments. Gareth, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Roeddwn ni jyst yn ategu yr hyn mae Vicky yn dweud ynglyn â'r gwaith sydd wedi mynd mewn i'r fersiwn yma o'r fframwaith, ac i ddweud hefyd fod y grynodeb sy'n ymddangos yn y papur cyflwyno yn fuddiol iawn, ac dwi'n meddwl bod hwnna yn ddatblygiad da iawn, a dylen ni gobeithio cadw hwnna at yr adroddiadau yn y dyfodol hefyd.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you. I have another hand up. I don't know whose hand it is. Lindsay. Lindsay, please. Thank you.
Points. I might be misreading this, so bear with me if I am. But TAF 3, the risk title is that there is a strategic risk of an optimised workforce supply and shape. And I wasn't sure if that read sufficiently in the negative as the risk, and whether I'm just misreading it.
So the risk is a lack of optimism.
Yes, yeah. So because all the other TAP risk titles are failure or problem. So I know what it's trying to say, but I just think that it's saying it in the positive rather than the actual risk. Yeah.
Yeah. Good point, thank you.
And then just the other point was a really helpful cover paper and noting the kind of actions in train. And I just wondered if there was an update on the one regarding the risk score trend, which an approach was going to be agreed in EMB in November.
We haven't got there. So no, yeah, we need to come back to that. Mel and I have been going through the multiple actions that we have to include them within the governance assurance risk programme, so that there's discussion, but we haven't quite got there yet. I think the focus has been on updating progress against IMTP actions in this TAF, making sure that we have a process for managing the updates in a logical way for this time round. So I think we'll need to come back to what we mean by some of the categories that we have here to make sure that we have a common understanding everywhere and have a process that helps us understand how we get to a final decision. So no, I'm afraid not.
So any was there a date kind of given for that?
I haven't got that. I will come back to that. So I'm happy to take that as an action. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So is that Lindsay's hand there?
Yes.
That was Lauren, thank you. Lauren, please. Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So a couple of things is just to on the link to AMTP. So you'll see in this report that in section 6, just to explain what that is. So these were the aligned IMTP actions to each of the TAF risks that we did the mapping for earlier in the year, and the colours of those are the Q1 action update that went to QSP last month. So it's worth explaining because it's slightly clunky process at the moment, but just to highlight what that is, because as we discussed as a board at some length, and Vicky provided some great advice on this at the time, that having the link to the IMTP objectives was important, because if those objectives are on track, then that is a source of
assurance for us as a board, and if they're not, vice versa. So that's where those colours have come from. So they're the governed IMTP updates, and that's what we'll carry on for this financial year. And the second point I wanted to make was a plug for the IMTP paper in Strategic Development Committee next week, because in the format that we have discussed as Executive Management Board, which will be shared next week, shows how there will be the integration of IMTP and TAF going forwards. So for each of the parts of the our strategic for each of our strategic pillars of Destination 2033 and the enabling strategies, we will assess in the IMTP what the strategic risks are of meeting those, have one set of actions. So just as reassurance for the board who that is on track, so that as we've said for some time, by April they will be one and the same thing.
Gareth, please. Thank you. I'm Gareth, there's yourself, Lauren, there's no other hands in between. No, so Gareth, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Rwy'n edrych ar y fframwaith ei hunan ar y dashfwrdd ac edrych ar enghraifft ar dudalen 4 o 27 a'r dyddiadau sydd y fewn fan hyn eto. So, just cymryd un, a dim yn pigo ar unrhyw un, ond enghraifft, ar waelod tudalen 4, mae'r weithred fyna, y dyddiad pan oedd ei fod i cael ei gweithredu nôl yn Ebrill mis Mai eleni. Ac wedyn ni, dyddiad diweddariad yw mis Hydref. Wedyn ni ar un uwchben ni, mae'r weithred fod i gael ei chyflawni erbyn mis Tachwedd eleni, a'r diweddariad yn mis Medi. So, mae'r un pwynt bron y bod ynglyn â'r gofrestr risg yw cael y dyddiadau yma yn mor ddiweddar a phosib, achos ar y funud, edrych ar rhai o'r gweithredoedd yma, maen nhw gyntaf gyd ddim wedi cael eu cyflawni erbyn y dyddiad gwreiddiol, ac mae'r diweddariad 2 fis 10 wythnos yn ôl. Felly, mae eisiau, dwi'n gwerthfawrogi'r gwaith sydd wedi cael ei wneud ar y fframwaith, ond dwi'n derbyn bod e'n broses sy'n parhau, ond mae eisiau cael y dyddiadau yma yn mwy cywir os yn bosib ac yn mwy diweddar at y cyfarfod bwrdd.
Thank you, Gareth. Same point previously.
Yes, I think, and I will say that, no, I'll say this in English. As we were having the discussion on risk and how we have that updated position, I had also made a note for myself to consider the same in the context of the TAF as well. So we will do that. And I will take those 2 actions on dates and on an overall approach for the risk, the overall risk rating back, and make sure that we report that back to the board next time.
Thank you. So can I just check, so as a reminder, perhaps I should know this. This in terms of the governance cycle and process. So this paper went to QSP on the 14th of November, and then it comes here, having gone through that.
And SDC.
Yeah, and SDC. So my question is, I think I know the answer, that whatever comes to this board is whatever went to those committees.
Yes, that's the governance.
And the issue then is what happens in the gap in between.
What happens in the gap in between is that these are live documents. Executive colleagues are looking at them and reviewing. Yeah. So this will be a moment in time that is presented to the board and committees from a government position point of view. We are following a very clear routine, which you've just outlined, but these are live documents. So
I guess my question is if that's the case, the version that comes to the board isn't the version that went to QSP, it's an updated version of that?
No, so the version presented to the committees is the confirmed position at that moment in time. So when we get to the committee and board cycle, that is the moment in time that where we pause. However, in the background, these are live documents that are being updated on a continuous basis.
Lindsay, please.
So our challenge, sorry, before I come to, so our challenge is in the same way we will accept the challenge with a risk. We have to come to a decision on how we can update you with the latest position, making sure that it's still a well-governed position and that the distinction is clear.
Because you understand the reason I'm asking. There's many documents that come to the board, most documents, been through a committee, have been endorsed, and then they come in that form. Okay, Lindsay, please.
I think very much on that point, it's about how we maintain governance flow that's effective. So if it's coming to QSP in November, but some of the update dates are September.
Absolutely,
That is allowed.
Yes.
I think then it's what is our tolerance for an update or not having an update between QSP and board, knowing that it's gone through the cycle. And again, I would say, unless there is an exception where there is something that should be escalated to board because it can't wait for the next QSP, and that would feel like the appropriate kind of governance flow.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. Okay, so I think something for us to have a little further look at. Gareth's hand is showing his hand number 2. Is it a hand number 1? Or is that? So I don't want to take.
Sorry, I haven't put mine down. Sorry, Steph.
Gareth, please, you're next.
Diolch Cadeirydd. Y peryg wrth gwrs yw a herwydd fod rhain yn ddogfennau cyhoeddus yw fod aelodau o'r cyhoedd yn cael yr argraff oherwydd mae'r diweddariad diwetha yw dweda'r 19 o fis Medi bod dim byd wedi digwydd yn y cyfamser. Ac nawr ni'n gwybod oherwydd bod ni yn rhan o'r ymddiriedolaeth fod pethau yn digwydd ac y rheswm mae'r dyddiadau fel hyn yw oherwydd y broses o governance. Ond rwy'n credu bod rhaid ni feddwl am ryw ffordd o allu gwneud yn siŵr fod y cyhoedd ddim yn meddwl bod dim byd wedi digwydd, enghraifft, ers 19 o fis Medi a rhywbeth, achos mae hwnna, mae'n mwy pwysig falle yn nghyswllt y gofrestr risg gyda'r risgiau sydd â sgôr yn uwch nag 1 ar 15, enghraifft, ond mae'r pwynt yn dal yn dilys yma hefyd, dwi'n meddwl.
Yeah, and I think we're agreeing with you, Gareth, in the sense that I think we are agreeing that September, October updates, we would have expected a more recent update for the QSP, for example, on the 14th of November. And then there's a separate discussion about, by exception, updates after that point. But I think we're all agreeing the point here, Gareth, that the QSP, for example, should receive a recent update on all of these points. And for QSP on the 14th of November, an update on the 18th of September, as you say, suggests that nothing's happened for 2 months. When in fact, of course, we know things have happened. They just haven't been recorded on this particular document for reasons I guess many of us will understand as well. So I think there's 2 parts to this. One is getting a very recent update to QSP, and then secondly, as Lindsay's describing, by exception, there may be things which may need to come to drawn to the attention of the board, which are urgent or important, post, for example, QSP.
Okay.
So I think there's more work we're going to do on this, but we're on a journey with this, and these are all useful and important contributions to refining this, so it's fit for purpose, not just in terms of our own requirements, but it's fit for purpose in terms of public understanding of the issues and the challenges and how we're dealing with them. Well, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I think in terms of the cover paper, the times first is clear.
Yeah.
But you know, if it's not clear, then we need to clarify that even further. But in terms of the snapshot of the appendix, I can't find a date on this.
Yeah.
But I think if we were to date it, then we would know the snapshot was as of.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And I think it would some of this need for further discussion on that point. I appreciate the good housekeeping around when we're updating actions. We do need to make it clear what the latest action is when it's about. So that added point might help as well.
Yeah, raising the fundamental importance of this in terms of a record of all of these things, not just for the board, but for posterity. Jazz, please.
Yeah, thank you. I guess just sort of bringing in the kind of clinical perspective to really both the risk register and the TAF. I mean, it's what is it telling us about where we are as an organisation and some of the real risks and pressures that we are feeling, which reflects, the expectation for us to deliver against our service. And I think, it's just recognising that, and actually there is work to do, but I think we have come a long way in trying to manage some of these challenges and risks, and credit to both SLTs in working incredibly hard to try and do this. I do feel we should also reflect on the content itself. And, I think what is really helpful is that we have clarity on areas that we do need to improve on with a plan, and at least some idea of a plan and an understanding of how we can improve on those areas. I think just reflecting on updating the TAF itself was helpful to see the progress that we have made. Some of the systems that we have in place with AMAT, trying to use that development of the clinical scientific strategy. So I'm speaking of the TAF that I guess I'm involved in. And it's really quite encouraging, I guess, to see that we're heading in the right direction. So I just thought it was worth reflecting on that.
Okay, thank you. That's an important comment there. Thank you for that. Are there any more comments or questions on the TAF before I sum up? Just this one observation which we've had several times before, and I sense there's nothing we can do about it. It's the presentational issue of, certainly on my version, on the admin control of the dashboard itself, there are only a few occasions where the text is cut off. And so okay. you read, there's a few there. For example, page 4, action 0201, or page up a bit. Is that page 2, action 0101? You can see there's little bits of text which have disappeared below the box. I know we've raised it. I know it's perhaps an issue around the technology. This isn't me being picky for picky's sake, but of course, what it then concerns me is, are there other boxes where, for example, there are lists of things which appear to end, where the list actually continues out of sight? So
I'll review that. And okay, we'll make sure that we republish the version, but with.
Yeah, now it may be the ones which go on the public website don't have this issue. It may be an admin control issue, because I know everything gets converted into PDFs from the original. Yeah, but obviously it's the concern is I don't know if there are things missing because they've been cut off, particularly if there are lists.
Yeah, okay, I'll double check.
Mark, please.
Yeah, it's not a system issue. I mean, obviously, because I'm familiar with using Excel all the time, it's people not understanding it.
Excel.
So constantly when I go in, not just correcting mine, I widen others, but because people update them, you have to do it all the time. Okay. So just widen the box. I mean, it's solvable. We just needs to review it every time.
I think that a universal setting in Excel for that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nice. It's not the technology publishing wise, it's just the Excel use.
Thank you. So again, that's been a very useful discussion. This is your, we'll have to note the current status and the ongoing development of trust assurance training, but a useful conversation on several aspects of that. I'm not going to try and capture every point and every detail, but I think there is a little bit more work we're going to be doing on this, particularly around the date issue that Gareth highlighted, recognising that all this needs to be managed within the agreed governance cycle, that there may be occasions where post, for example, QSP review, there may be occasions by exception where matters which need to be drawn to the attention of the board can be then highlighted in the cover paper, but as we say, by exception, it is urgent or important. We'll try that for the next cycle, and we'll go around that next time around as well again. So thank you very much for that. But I need to move us on because I'm starting to slip behind schedule here. So the next item is the performance management framework for September 2024. This is item 4.3. There's a very large 102-page document in the pack there, and the colleagues who are going to be involved, various stage presenters, I've got down as Lauren, Matt and Amanda in Sarah's absent. Obviously going to be here for discussion and noting. This document presents the key performance issues set out within the performance management framework report and the supporting analysis. So I'm not sure what detail of update you want to provide to us, colleagues, but obviously after whatever update we have, we can then go through and take comments and questions. So will I start with yourself, Lauren?
I'm going to say 5 things up front, but I'll say them to reassure you. So the first is, as we did last time in September, we have provided a significant amount of detail in the previous governance discussions section, which goes through the QSP assurance that was provided there on the overall report on the services. In terms of the format, we discussed this at QSP, so for those who weren't there, there's been 2 changes to this report. The first is in the cover paper, there are, instead of the usual narrative, the divisional reports, and it's led on a format with the divisional teams, which provides a snapshot across the core services. And that was received well at QSP. And as we said we would do there for the next month's report, which doesn't actually come through to QSP or board, the October one that we considered in Executive Management Board this week, we continued that format for the other services that are included in the cover reports, so across the states, digital, finance. So you'll see that coming through in the next cycle. The second format change we've made for this report is exceptional reporting. So even though it is 100 pages, we have condensed that as far as we can, based on the feedback from the committee and the board, where you receive the overall dashboard, but the detailed pages then are for any of those not meeting required standards. In terms of the assurance level, it's referenced in the QSP commentary that it had been at a 5 for some time, and we hadn't really sort of gone back around that as an executive management board recently. So we agreed in QSP that was not the right rating. So at executive management board this week, we were discussing the approach going forwards, where we would provide an overall rating for the report, plus in the same way that the supply and shape paper does at QSP, a assurance rating for each of the core service areas. So you'll see that coming through in the next cycle. On the 7 packages of work that we defined and referenced in the September report, the updated progress is here. And to link to another couple of parts of the agenda, the second element is the quality metrics and how that work is being done now on a phased basis, and will lead into the always-on reporting from next year. And the second is the single source of the truth with the patient tracker list item. So, which is number 3 in of the packages of work, and we are considering a paper in the private board session today on the procurement of a patient tracker list, which is being led by Anne. It's in the private session because it's a commercial procurement matter at this stage, just to link to that part of the agenda. And then the final thing, just to reference David and the patient and carer board, would really appreciate your feedback, David, when the upcoming meetings, because this report is clearly for the board's assurance, but needs to be as accessible and meaningful as possible to our patients and carers and donors. The last time we came to the board, we were discussing the IMTP, so maybe this is something for the next time we're invited, David.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
So thanks. I'll pass over to Anne.
Then thank you. Thank you for that, Lauren. I'm just checking there's no hands at this stage. We're going to pass. Obviously, there will be opportunity for questions and comments, but I'll pass across to yourself, Anne, please.
There's very little to add on this. Is an September snapshot that has been through the governance. I think we've talked about that already. We now moved on to October and the things that we would like to do and present in the next iteration of this to try and give more of the holistic picture for each of the services. So discussions are underway with how we're going to do that as well. But I'm very happy to take any feedback on the report or any questions.
Thank you for that. So I just wanted to open it up to the committee then. So there's two aspects. This is feedback on the report itself, and then there's questions and comments in terms of the actual performance. As I say, we've been helpfully reminded of, as is set out, that this has been through quite a very rigorous, I'm sure, scrutiny at QSP. So I'm just actually taking us to the cover paper. Lauren's reference this. So on page 2 of the cover paper, we've got the performance highlights summarised there for the Cancer Centre and Welsh Blood Service, particularly the Cancer Centre in terms of SACT performance and radiotherapy performance. And then further down in the governance discussion summary section, there's quite a detailed summary there of discussions at QSP. Obviously, that's the all for our assurance. So I just want to check if there are any comments or questions at this stage. Lauren, please. So we
David Gwan initially, but I don't know whether.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to check before we get the workforce bits of it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to take this in stage. We will come to you, Amanda. In terms of those parts which aren't finance or workforce, are there any comments or questions? Obviously, we come back to you if there are. Vicky, please. Vicky.
I think just a repeated theme, really, because QSP did spend a significant amount of time looking at the format and the way that we can escalate issues for discussion, because, as you say, it's a large document with a lot of quality and safety issues and measures in it. I think the way that it's developing now will help and guide those conversations so we can make sure we spend the right time on the issues that we need to discuss. And I think so it's just to assure the board that we did spend significant amount of time on that and critique in any areas that we needed to, particularly in the quality and safety domain.
Thank you, Vicky. And say that's an important assurance and equally important for members of the public as well to understand this has already been thoroughly scrutinised at a subcommittee, or sorry, at a committee of the board. I'll move us on then perhaps to Amanda just to update us on workforce issues as you see fit, and then we can open that up for questions if there are any. Recognising again it's been through QSP. So Amanda, yeah.
My main point was going to be similarly to what has already been noted, that this has been through QSP. There's been quite a lot of scrutiny in terms of the sickness data and the downward trend that we're having in that data, and there has been a request for more detailed analysis on our PADR compliance. So they were really the 2 points that I had that's going to be scrutinised at QSP.
Thank you very much. It's very helpful. I just pause at this point. Is there any comments or questions? Andrew, please.
Comment. There's clearly a lot of targets here, and it feels like there are more than we've seen before. I guess because there's that sort of VCC, and I was looking at the PADR complexes. There's a VCC one, there's a Welsh Blood, and then the combined trust-wide. So there is a lot of data. There seems to be some new digital ones. I'm intrigued. The one about the number they clicked on the phishing campaign. Thankfully, I don't think I did, but the point was it was over 10%, and you know, cybersecurity is so, you know, something going wrong can be so critical to all the systems. And I was looking, you know, that seems to be a new one that hadn't been there before, and it's good it was there. Again, and the follow-up, I've just gone to the page where they have the detail, and there are mitigating actions, but I think, yeah, it's just a comment that there's a lot of this, but then they all seem to have their place. You know, it's difficult to argue that any of these should be there. So because it continues to develop. Yeah.
I'll just come in on that particular one. That's what we're trying to measure there. We do these automated phishing campaigns to try and educate, communicate, build confidence with our staff that they can spot a phishing email and know how to report it. We've been doing them for a significant period of time now, and we do see an improving position. Whilst we're improving, we're also increasing the sophistication of the phishers. The one that went out recently had a lost puppy, thinking that it's tugged at heartstrings. It did lots of things that you can see an increased rate. So you've always got to bear in mind that kind of little bit of social engineering that at the heartstrings, and you might actually get there. With that particular measure, we measure right now the number of people that click through, and if they click through, they get a training. It's not a performance or a disciplinary type thing. It's just an education type thing. You did click on it. This one. What might have happened if it was real. So, but we're also trying to then start to measure more the people who do the right thing and report the phishing email, because we want to promote the right behaviour as well as just measuring the negative aspect of it.
You mentioned in the notes related to the cyber security manager commence in post December. So that these things all help. Okay. That's good. So it wasn't really a question, just a comment. And yeah, it is a lot of talk.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in there. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that as well, Carl. So are there any? Oh, sorry, Vicky, please.
I think it's just to comment on the workforce section, and again in QSP we had detailed discussion on the performance report, but other workforce papers. The importance is that we've spent as a committee a lot of time making sure that the workforce team are bringing forward the action plans that support strategy. But we also in this committee had a discussion about we need to demonstrate the outcomes. So through our discussion on the levels of assurance, we were getting to the crux of all of that really. So there were a couple of areas where we had to decrease the level of assurance through our discussion. And that's starting to play through helpfully, because we've got to be able to demonstrate the outcomes as a result of our actions to increase our levels of assurance. And Sarah and the team have been developing the different levels of assurance for the different areas, and that's really helpful because you can focus on a particular area and are we demonstrating that we're achieving the outcomes that we want to as a trust. So that was just a comment on the workforce section.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. Thank you for that. There are no more comments or questions on the workforce section, or indeed the digital section. I think perhaps we should involve you more in this, Carl, going forward in terms of presenting. That would be helpful. Thank you. I'll move us on. So the last section is finance. I'm conscious we have the finance report up next. So I don't know whether you want to make any comments now or wait until we get to the finance report.
I mean, normally we just move on to the actual report. So.
Yeah, so what I'll do, I will refer colleagues to section 1.7 of the paper. Just see, I know you've read all this, but that's where the key bullet points, which is page 20 of 102, that's the key bullet points in terms of finance, but we will be moving on shortly to the finance report presentation itself. Are there any more comments or questions on the report? Lindsay, please.
It's a more general point, and I don't think, Vicky can correct me, but I don't think we raised it in QSP. But I noticed, as an example, under the, this is on page 28 of 102, so the top table on London Transport, timeliness scorecard. And I noticed very helpfully the review on the reference seriology turnaround times. And when you look at the slide, it kind of gives the narrative that helps explain about bringing it in line with best practice. And I just wondered in terms of that benchmarking, so how do we know what good looks like and how do we know that we're measuring the right things? And that just kind of struck me as something where we are having a rethink about, are we measuring the right thing? Yeah. And how are we knowing? So it was kind of picking up on that, but wondering, you know, is there more we need to do in relation to some of the other areas as well? Or do we do that as and when, or is there a need to kind of look at that on a regular basis?
I'm happy to take that, Chair. So Alan and the team are absolutely looking at that. And I'm glad you picked up on it because it is a conversation that's quite live at the moment. Obviously, as a Welsh blood service, we can benchmark with the UK, Scotland, and the four nations. So that is happening. It's a question of how much of that data would be useful to bring through. But I'll take your point on that one, and we'll feed that into those discussions about what feeds through and what doesn't. Because there is, both for VCC and WBS, there's a conversation about the baseline productivity of the services that I think we don't get. We get the performance, but we don't understand enough about the productivity. So that's something that we're trying to address. Hopefully we'll make more progress in the next version, but I think it's going to be iterative as we move through, and really happy to have pointers, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So no more comments or questions then. I'm going to ask the board to note the September 2024 Performance Management Framework Report. Okay. Thank you. I'll move us on now, as we've already trailed. So we're now going to go on to 4.4, which is the financial report. The report covers off the LTA long-term agreement, financial values and contract rebase, the integrated medium-term plan, financial plan and forecast, and the key financial targets and KPIs. And we're going to be asked, I'm not going to read the whole thing, there are 5 bullet points which are set out in the covering paper that we're going to be asked to note in terms of the report itself. So I'm going to pass over to yourself, Matt. As always, we can take the papers as read and anything you want to highlight, and then we can move on to questions and comments.
Stephen, I'd just like to put out 3 points. First one is page 17.
It's in the cover.
Yeah, exec summary cover and yeah. On the contract rebase, the commissioners discussed responses from all of the commissioning bodies in the last meeting, which was last week, where there was not a unanimous agreement to move to the rebasing with a neutral impact across commissioners. They could not agree to the rebasing of Belinda, so that will not happen. Consequences of that are that we continue with contract baselines that are 15 plus years old. Second point I'd like to pull out on the next page, page 3 of 13. Second bullet point, just to flag that the new financial risk emerged, which is not due to a financial risk per se, it's to do with capturing of activity, making sure that activity is correctly captured from our clinical systems. So we're not saying clinical systems are not reflecting the activity, it's how that flows into data warehouse. And then the secondary bit of work we need to do is just making sure that all that is correctly mapped by contracting currencies and then reported chargeable to our commissioners. Well, we've been reviewing at a high level activity and then what that means in terms of income for our commissioners. A planned additional income of 1.3 million this year wasn't materializing on track as we expected. So there is a risk potentially of circa £700,000 of that income not being delivered based on the data we've had at month 6. What that means in delivering. So we're working with Data Insights and with Sense CDNT to review all that and identify where the process is going wrong in terms of those control processes and what we're going to do about that. Important point to notice that Vicky, as chair of the QSP committee, flagged the link between the finance risk here, the need for me then also to update the trust assurance frame, the financial sustainability TAF 8, which I haven't done if you actually look in the one for the board, but will be updated to reflect the control around this process having a weakness. And the actions that we're taking to mitigate that will also be included. And clearly there's a link then to this paper and the risk. And EMB agreed that we need to obviously record this risk on data actually. So we will also have obviously link to the risk reporting. Key thing is the actions that we're taking. So I just want to say, I want to give assurance that this isn't actually the first time we've had this. So last year, actually, if you actually look back at some of the reports, we had a similar problem, which just tells me we haven't solved the actual process issue. We've probably had workarounds to make sure we've got that activity in and charged it. It does come back to some of the new clinical systems that have been implemented, the main one being, for example, radiotherapy systems, and how we're connecting that into the warehouse, but also then mapping the data. That was quite long, but it's quite an important one, I think, to draw up. And then the final one is really just around down to the KPIs, the last bullet point, flagging not having capital funding, therefore our capital expenditure limited is showing as amber on the actual summary report. Clearly, we've now had approval for most companies, taking the works addendum, so the UBCC. So timing of this report is still, because it went to QSP, we hadn't had the letter at that point suggested we got that KPI not left, but it will be in the budget. Those are the three I want to draw out, but I think questions.
Thank you. Carl, I've just got one question myself to start with. Carl.
Only just to add to Matt's point. So obviously, Matt and I went through this a couple of days ago. Just a couple of things. To add to what Matt has said, in essence, we've got to sort this out, and we know that because we need to essentially be paid for the work we've done. But just to give the board assurance, we'll work that through. We set up a task and finish, which Matt has said, to build on what's already been done. The second bit, we've had a little look at some scenarios in terms of best case, worst case, most likely. We won't play that out today because we need to do the work first of all, but just to give the board assurance, even in the worst case scenario, which we don't think will arise, still confident that we'll be able to achieve financial balance at the end of the year. That's important. However, what we can't do is just do the short term and not worry about the medium term, because these are inextricably linked. So we need to solve that. The bigger worry going forward is Matt's point. I was just listening, and it does sound a bit odd, doesn't it, when we say we've got a currency in a baseline 15 years old. So it's just something for us to reflect on as an NHS organisation about, is that how we want to do things as a system? But just to say that we're still on target to balance, but we need to solve these things because it's about the sustainable long-term position of the organisation, not just getting to March. So we'll bring that back in the next board meeting to let you know where we've got to.
Okay, thank you, Carol. In a sense, that's preempted my question.
Okay, sorry.
That's answered my question in terms of the anticipated year-end outturn. But thank you for that, Matt. The paper is here for information. Andrew, please.
And I think actually we should talk about this in the private section, because I'm trying to understand with respect to Hywel Dda and the income from there. There's that section on page 6 of 13 on the cover paper. There's a bullet point that says Hywel Dda UHB has, and then it stops. And then there's another paragraph which is about patient flows and whatever. And of course, I don't properly understand it. I'd like to understand it, but I think actually it's probably more appropriate for the private sector.
Say, there's a slot on the board briefing in December. Our chair, well, I think all the committee members have asked for a session just to go through what the LTAs, when we talk about baseline, what do we mean? What's it based on? And just helping how we were talking about moving our currencies from that historical way of counting activity and guiding for us to a new. Just the whole piece on commissioning and LTAs.
And that's in December. Yes, of course. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
that would be useful.
Yeah, obviously it's very important, Andrew, and as you say, a proper and thorough discussion would probably last an hour or more, which we wouldn't have time for today. Sure. But just to mention the board again as a reminder, I've had a long session with Matt myself to go through some of this. We agreed, you know, I can't think it was QSP or here that I go through it in some considerable detail as an ex-finance director myself, just to make sure I was cited on the key issues. So
fine. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I remember now that it's on, and we could part.
Yeah, but obviously it will be discussed. The board will have up to discuss in some detail at a briefing session, and then it'll come back to the normal governance processes in terms of the public presentation of that.
It's intrinsically linked to the previous point that pricing wasn't agreed because Halvar refused to, because of that view that they've changed their pathways for patient flows, and therefore they're not going to accept a neutrality because they're paying costs. Essentially, they're paying their new provider in Salisbury, paying us. But yeah, so your link is correct. You've obviously made a good link in terms of reading this.
Okay, so say we'll go through that in some detail appropriately to the briefing session for the purposes of today. Also, we're going to note Matt's update, and we're also going to note Carl's reassurance around the expectation of the certainty of a year-end break-even. Clearly, there's more
on what we know now.
On what we know now, yes.
But on what we know now,
it's reassurance.
We're still
yeah, absolutely understand that.
Break-even in March,
but obviously there's still 7 months to go yet. Yeah, so we understand all of the nuances there, Carl. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions for Matt or indeed for Carl on this paper? As I say, in terms of summing up, I want to pick up a couple of issues. We particularly want to highlight the financial, or note the financial risk, which Matt has described, the final bullet point above heading 3 on page 3 of the cover paper. And again, I just want to draw the board's attention in terms of in heading 3 on page 3, the third bullet point there, the risk that's described there is now gone away in a sense, because as Matt described, we've now secured the necessary capital funding to remove that risk as we expected. But obviously, it's never certain until we receive it. We have now. So on that basis, are we happy to note the contents of the September 2024, content to note the contents of the September 2024 financial report? And I'm not going to read them, the 5 bullet points there set out on the bottom of page 3 and top of page 4 under recommendations and actions. Are I happy to do that? Yes, thank you very much. I'm conscious of time, and according to my notes here, we scheduled a break at 11:45. Yep. But I should have covered another 2 items to do that, but we haven't. But given how long we've been going at this, and if Nicola doesn't mind the slight delay, I'm going to call a 10-minute break now, and we'll reconvene at 12 o'clock, and then we'll take items 4.5 onwards. So, colleagues, happy to do that? Yes, thank you very much. We'll reconvene at 12 o'clock on the dot, please. Thank you. Well, welcome back, everybody. We can restart the meeting now. Thank you. Sorry, that took 3 minutes longer than we expected. Our apologies. So I'm going to return to the agenda. So we've just completed item 4.4, the financial report. And I should have mentioned, of course, that included the NDC, the TCS finance report as well. I know that detail was in there. I'm going to move us on now to item 4.5, which is the Public Quality, Safety and Performance Committee highlight report from the meeting of the 14th of November 2024. And I'm going to invite Vicky to speak in a moment, but the reason this is on the main agenda, not in consent, is that contained within the highlight report there is an items in the alert/escalate box. So in terms of presenting this, I'll hand across to yourself, Vicky, I think, perhaps just to introduce this and take us through whatever appropriate points you want to highlight and escalate.
I mean, I think I'd like to bring in Nick after, just do an introduction, because I think the importance is that as a board, we spend sufficient time on quality and safety. And obviously on behalf of the board, QSP does that in terms of all the papers it receives. But it is really important that we're able to particularly highlight any escalations or alerts. And there were some key elements in this meeting that certainly triangulated. You'll see the points at the beginning of this highlight paper. We, of course, as we have done for about the last 18 months, provide a link so that any independent members or exec directors could go in and review the detail. So that's as said. But the key issues that triangulate, you'll see at the beginning of the paper, which is really important for us as a committee to consider all the papers that we've reviewed and think about any emerging pictures that provides. So that's a section at the beginning. And as you can see, as we've already discussed, so I won't go into the detail, the varying numbers of papers where we considered the levels of assurance and either changed it up or changed it down. And that, so what we're asking as a committee is that we are seeing the evidence of the actions delivered and the outcomes as a result of that, in order that I can give the Trust Board assurance. So I think that's said across all of those papers, but I'll hand to Nick to be able to go through the issues that are in the paper that alert or escalate.
Thank you, Vicky. So Nick, go with yourself, please.
Thank you. So one of the items was the risk register. I think the board has already had a considerable discussion on that this morning, so that was the main area. We had a lot of discussion, again, that's already been alluded to in relation to staff and analysis of some of the action plans that we had been provided. The areas we felt it was important to make the board aware and provide the quarterly quality and safety reports to the board. This is the second quarter report that we've provided that brings together what were previously 6 different reports from 6 different areas of the trust. And we felt that doing it on a slide content we were able to distill information much easier. So it's being produced through the leads of the different areas, along with the 3 quality hubs that are now well established that we've done as part of our quality and safety framework, where really colleagues get together and really try and synthesize and analyze what's happened in the previous quarterly. It's done every month and then aggregated up for the quarter. And I would like to draw the board's attention to slide 10 of 74, which outlines the overview, general overview position. We are seeing, a number of improvements due to enhanced processes being in place. Concerns, for example, we are not receiving any referrals through to the Public Service Ombudsman at the moment, or be open to concerns. So again, that equates to how we are managing and responding to complainants, which is very positive. Another really good piece of work that's been alluded to already, which is the development and the implementation of the AMET Quality Assurance Tracker, which really is now providing us with a mechanism of having significant oversight. Have we done what we said we were going to do following a serious incident investigation, or following inspection or a review or an audit? Although we still got a small number that are overdue, in the main, we've actually got the explanations for that and are following that through and monitoring that through the committee. The only bit to highlight in addition, before I open up for questions, is the quality metric work is the area that we've been somewhat delayed on. We all know the reason why, because the resource was allocated to the SACT improvement work. As Lauren's already mentioned, we are now well into the development of that dashboard, which will then lead into our quality outcome framework as well. So, that is happening, and the integrated quality and safety group is having the oversight of that through Carl and his team's presence, and we had a good summary in the last meeting on that. So I'll stop there, and Vicky, myself and Tina will happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So again, thank you both. So again, just so I know we all understand, but to be clear, obviously this highlight report summarises many hours of discussion, debate, challenge and assurance at the Quality, Safety and Performance Committee chaired by Vicky. So there will have been considerable discussion there, but obviously I'm very happy to open up this highlight report for any questions or comments, particularly from members of the board who don't sit on QSP. It's been thoroughly scrutinised already, so I'm not seeing any hands. So thank you for that, Vicky, and thank you as well, Nick, for just taking us through that report. The report is here for us to note the key deliberations and highlights from the meeting of the QSP on the 14th of November 2024, and also the Q2 quality and safety report. Okay. Nothing else. I'm going to move us on now. So now we're going to move on to 4.6. And Tina, I think you've joined us for this particular item. So this is the matter arising, which we referred to when we considered the minutes at the start of the meeting. So this is a paper just to update us in terms of the process for capture of patient and donor feedback. So I think you're going to lead on this, so you're going to hand straight to Tina. Obviously, there's a paper there, paper 4.6.
This paper came out of action from Trust Board, last Trust Board, where there was a conversation around how we are gathering donor feedback, I think in particular, which led on to identifying really where we felt there was a gap. Probably, I think it's really important to recognise there's lots of good work going on across the organisation to capture patient and donor experience. But it was my scoping exercise that I undertook in full collaboration with both divisions was around where we are potentially missing opportunities to capture feedback, and certainly to include that within the triangulation of our quality and safety reporting. So we're very dependent on our Civica feedback surveys, where when you look at the proportion of people we actually see across the organisation, it's quite a low percentage of that, especially in the cancer centre. We get more uptake on surveys in Welsh Blood Service because of the nature of the survey and the business. And we've been very reliant on this as a quantitative measure, really, of our performance. So I think it'd been the first time we'd all come together as a group of engagement and experience, because inevitably when you look at engagement, you're going to capture patient and donor experience. So, and we put together in this document currently how we capture it. And there definitely seems like there's real missed opportunities to capture that feedback and use that within our reports. So what's quite timely is the People's Experience Framework has been refreshed. It's been a big national piece of work that has gone out and is embargoed at the minute because it's having final additions really, and it's gone for publication. But with permission, I've asked if we could utilise the self-assessment within that document for the work that we need to do going forward. So since this paper's been done, which was the recommendation within the paper, which was approved at DNB, was to pull together identified people from across the divisions to start the self-assessment tool. And I've had conversations today with David and I as part of the patient engagement board then about how we work much more collaboratively going forward. And the self-assessment that we have done already, just very brief as two areas as identified, we've got lots of work to do really to really get this right, to use our patient and donor experience to properly shape our services, to work in collaboration. The other thing we need to bring in as well is there's a lot in the People's Experience Framework of our workforce. Are we listening to our staff? Are we using what our staff say as well to inform how we work? So, a kind of scoping exercise that identified we've got lots to do really, and lots of, because we're a small organisation, a lot of our roles are quite blended. So our patient and donor experience leads are often the people who deal with complaints as well, which is really important. But sometimes that kind of reactive process takes over some of the more proactive stuff that we really need to do within the organisation. So I think doing the self-assessment, which was facilitated by the Welsh Risk Pool for us, is really going to be a good opportunity. So it's a bit watch the space really of where we go next to come up with an improvement plan across the organisation of what we need to do.
Thank you. Nick, please.
Anything to add to what Tina has said? So what we've agreed with David this morning is that we will do the same gap analysis with the patient engagement board, because see how do they feel we are actually performing against the framework. And there were a couple of workforce and engagement team that weren't present during that. So we're going to do that in the next in the next couple of months. We're not going to rush this. We need to get this self-assessment done properly and get a clear view. We would clearly start looking at what we need to do at this point, but I think it's important we don't rush it. We get it right. That will then go through. I don't
think it'll be ready necessarily for January's committee, but we will of course provide the national document because that should be published by then. But certainly by the cycle after January, we will have completed that work. We will have a plan in place and we will bring that through the governance cycle. I think it gives us a good starter, whether, as David mentioned this morning, whether it would actually get us to be world class in that space, it's probably debatable, but it'll be a good start for 10. But it will help us to get to our ambition where the patient donor voice and engagement is that golden thread that runs through our organisation. I don't know whether David would wish to add anything.
Yeah, if I gave the board a bit of an update in terms of the patient care partnership board. So we've launched that 2 months ago with great success, I would describe, compared to where we were previously with what you had known as the patient liaison group. Real benefit and positive is the number of people that have come to speak to us is just gone off the scale, to be perfectly honest, which comes with risk, because all of a sudden we wanted a patient partnership board. We wanted to be present. We wanted to be included, and now we are. And so the onus is also on us as a board to deliver. I think the opportunity or maybe the risk there is, whilst lots of people have come to speak to us, sometimes it may feel a bit of duplication, and sometimes it feels just a little bit disconnected. So spending time with Nicola and that this morning, certainly with the framework, the expectation that we have as the patient board for Velindre is that it can formalise a structure of both recognition and probably output. So I think what we're asking for is to be included. We want work. We want to make a difference. And in the way that I described, we want to get our hands dirty. And I think we've dabbled with that as a collective up until now. But now with the framework coming, I'm hoping that will be the catalyst to create the organised, structured involvement of the patient's voice. So I welcome all of you to come and attend our meetings and to draw on us as a population of people to share that patient voice going forward.
That's very helpful. Thank you, David. Just on the point of the meetings, it would obviously be very helpful then perhaps to circulate to the board if there is a schedule of meetings or if it's just the next meeting, just so we know the dates of that. I think that's a very helpful point. Thank you.
Will do.
So 2 hands go up, Nick.
David's comments there. So therefore, I suppose our challenge is how do we then get the voice from the partnership board at the Cancer Service and the one that's been established in the Welsh Blood Service through to this board in a regular way, through to the committee, but also this board, because we need to be hearing what's happening at the boards, what is coming through there, and David obviously being a member of this board may be the vehicle. But I think if we could have a discussion with Nod outside of here in relation to how we map through that governance along with the trust chair.
I see your hand, and before I move on. No, so there's various hands popping up. I think the first hand that popped up was actually Lindsay, if I may.
I really welcome having the fuller explanation in this piece of work about understanding what we do and what we're missing. What I'd really like to understand a little bit, how we put a partnership on as well, is when we are then feeling that we're getting views and input from as many different places as we can. For me, it's still then the so what question. So how do we know what difference that's making? What actions are we taking on what we're hearing? And then absolutely coming back to the partnership board with that kind of loop of and what difference has it made? So what difference do we think we're making? What difference? And I think really that's not where we're at yet, but that maturity then kind of further down the line would be absolutely brilliant to see that coming back through to us so that we really understand. It ties back into one point on the integrated report that that we had in the last item, which is clear that communication comes through as quite a clear issue in so many different settings. And if we're hearing that and hear that more widely as we gather the information from different places, then we want to know, well, how are we changing the way we communicate so that that becomes less of an issue for people? That would be one example of seeing what difference this makes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, we'll come to you in a moment, Andrew. I think there was a few hands actually popped up simultaneously to Lindsay. I helpfully got them over here now. So I think, Lauren, you going to make a comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I just want to say thank you to David, because David chaired, as most people will know, I'm sure, the previous patient liaison group for a number of years, and then put a huge amount of time and effort in with Non and Lisa in developing the patient and carer partnership board. And to get to that terms of reference and the job descriptions, there was a huge amount of thought that went and work that went into that. Significant amount from David, so thank you. And I think it's a good conversation, because I'm thinking it's been running in this way now for 3 or 4 months in this new guise, and actually we've discussed lots of different options over the last year around the visibility of at board and committee level, with representation, with highlight reporting, with potentially a patient board stamp on items to show that there has been that formal engagement. So we're sort of exploring lots of different things, but it's probably an item at Plan Out Loud, a strategic development committee or a development day or something where we can discuss that all together again, now that we have got ourselves up and running in our new format. But anyway, the main thing is thank you to David. Thank you.
I will work through the list if I may. So the next up, I think, is Rachel, please. Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a really positive move forward, and we've had really good conversations with David and the Patient and Carers Board. I'm happy to pick up with Non outside of this, because some of the discussions that we've been having with David is how we develop a formal work plan, which then helps with some of that really tangible outputs and measurable outputs, very much related to a suite of work around forward-looking things like the satellite unit, but also very much looking at how we work with the teams here and now today to help address some of those things. Already recognised, and a key piece of work we will be doing with them is around patient communication, because that's got multiple benefits to us, both on the satellite site, our current hospital, but also going into the new hospital. And I think the conversation that we had with David is around how that can be quite a tangible, almost like a project in its own entity, where we can bring a lot of the ongoing conversations that are happening in multiple places together to work with the patient and carers to make those visible changes.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. That's helpful. Thank you. Anne, please.
It was building on what Rachel has said, and also reflecting on some of my previous experience with new builds going into a new hospital, and the service design that needs to go on to get us from where we currently are into that new organisation. So there's something about maybe looking at our structures and ensuring that we have got a patient representative feed into those things. I'm thinking particularly about outpatients and how we need to completely remodel our outpatient offer and how we engage with patients there. There's a digital piece, and I know Carl's probably thinking that as well. So I think there's a lot we can do in this space, and as Rachel says, it's about thinking how we can plug the right people in at the right stages. And obviously we'll also be interviewing for more staff as well, and we need to think about how we can get the patient voice into that forum as well.
Non, if I may, just a quick comment, and then I will go to Andrew. So Non, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the really positive pieces of work that Patient Care Board are already thinking about is how, as a relatively small group of people, they can be assured that, and assure you that they are actually representing the wider voice as well. So there's a lot of discussion at the moment about making sure that we're linking in not only with patient care board, but how does the patient care board act as an advocate on behalf of as well? So that's a really interesting piece that, you know, it's still very early days at the moment, but that is very important to David, I know, and to the board and to us as well. Rachel and I have discussed what we need to do in terms of a work plan, and I think it is very important that we do, when we come together under this piece of work, recognise that there is ongoing work. So, for example, from a communications point of view, thinking about the website, ongoing work to really address some of the issues we're hearing from patients through the board right now. So how, to your point, David, about not duplicating effort, but actually really clarifying what we think the scope for this work is going to be, and how do we make sure that we all come together to provide you as a board with an update that gives a feel for that huge scope of work that we're talking about here is really very clearly on all our minds at the moment.
Thank you, Lon, that's helpful. Is this directly, right? Because I keep pushing Andrew back, so sorry.
Thanks. Just picking up what Lon said there, really, you know, the self-assessment really helps that.
Yeah.
You know, there's 5 criteria, and then under that there's 24 characteristics, they call it. And it really focuses what you need to do, and it isn't just one person's role, it's spread across the organisation. You know, picking up what we talked about with David, one of the sections is how do you really properly evidence you're using people's feedback to drive the quality within the organisation, and that's patients, donors and staff. So how do you really evidence you're listening to people? And it gives examples of what good looks like to help guide you as well. So it's quite daunting because, you know, when we did a sort of very brief self-assessment, we didn't have a lot of green on that plan at first glance, so there's lots of work to do. But, you know, it's about how we report that through to you as well and share that and work proper collaboratively around that, isn't it? So that it's what everybody needs, really. But I think being able to have this before this time, we're the first organisation across Wales to do it in advance of it being published and launched. So, you know, I think it really gives us a head start. But I think it's about, this isn't something that we can have done in a couple of weeks, is it? It's going to be a real kind of system process. The other thing we're trying to do as well is we're scoping out in what they do in some mental health services, because some mental health services have got really good co-production with their service users. So is somebody doing it really well currently that we can adopt some of that as well? You know, mental health got paid representatives working in their services and they to shape their services. Yeah. So I think let's have a look a little bit outside Cancer and Blood as well around how people are doing things really well. So, you know, all of that is obviously on the horizon, but it sits across the whole of the organisation, not just within the quality team, really, isn't it?
Right, Andrew, sorry, normally I do this to Gareth, but
yeah, absolutely. The work plan's critical, resourcing, you know, everything needs resource to deliver this, and then, but just a note of caution, really, capturing feedback. I'm looking at the page 8 on the recommendations there, capturing feedback received by staff verbally, social media channels, events, you know, that's, do have to be quite careful with social media. Obviously, we've got different platforms and the way people, you know, take to social media. And the Donor Awards, having been to one recently, you know, they're a super positive crowd. You know, they're only going to give you very positive feedback. So there is this aspect of, you know, getting a representative sample of feedback. And I know these things will have all these things in mind. That so it's a very positive to see this, and we're pleased to see this develop. And yeah, it's going to help us, of course, in lots of ways.
The other thing to mention as well is part of this group is our dementia lead nurse and our safeguarding and vulnerable groups lead as well, because we want to make sure. And we've got a separate subgroup looking at the accessibility report that was recently produced for Civica to make sure we're getting feedback from the hardest to reach groups, really. So there is a little bit about that in the self-assessment, but it's certainly something as an organisation we want to make sure we're doing that we're giving opportunities for people who may not find it easy to feed back to us, isn't it? Yeah. And potentially find it harder to access our service than anybody else. So that's going to be one of the key priorities for us in this work as well.
Indeed, yeah. That aspect of learning from other external organisations is so important.
Yeah. Somebody's doing it well, isn't it? We just want to reinvent the wheel, isn't it?
You have a thought there, Lindsay? I can see your hand.
Yeah, yes, I thought my electronic hand is up as well.
So it is, sorry, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to come to that point. It follows on really well about the people's experience framework and equality being one of the aspects of that. So I would be very happy to be involved appropriately, of course, in terms of supporting this work. I have got considerable background in terms of supporting the enabling people to have a voice, particularly within mental health services. So whether they're using services or actually people who don't use services, that there's, again, it's not about we're hard to reach.
People have to there are
issues about what we put in the way of people reaching us, but very, very happy to look at, as I say, appropriate. Don't want to kind of step into the operational, but very happy to support, engage with
Thank you, Nick, please.
Yeah, just picking up on the communication that was raised earlier, and certainly it echoed with the conversation we had with David on the feedback from the board as well, is the people in patient engagement board. It's been a theme for us as a trust for a very long time, and it's both divisions. So I think we need to go away, and when we're now thinking about our quality priorities for 25, 26 and onwards, and look at what can we do in that space, because I think we've got to go there. It's multifactorial. It's not one solution, but essentially our patients, their families, and our donors, are repeatedly telling us that communication is a problem for this organisation. So I think we with the board's permission, we'll go away, we'll engage widely, but think about how we can turn that into a quality priority for the organisation for next year. But it'll be longer than a 1 year. It'll be something that will take some time. But I think if we could have some concerted, work in that area, I think it would be helpful.
And just on that point, Nicola, the bit that I would ask of the trust and yourselves is to really embrace and let the patient, carer and family member lead it with the greatest respect. Sometimes an organisation wants to fix what is recognised as a problem, but sometimes will not look at it through the lens of the user. And I think if you're going to look at it in that way with communication, and we talk about the desire for Felindra to be world class, it's not very often in my experience that the leadership of such a topic will be led and given to the service user. And I would really encourage you to allow that to happen with guidance, of course, but really let the patients direct you to what would make the difference, because I think it will make the difference.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really important comments. So thank you for raising that. A very important reminder in a sense. Carl, you had your hand up?
Yeah, no, just listening. I mean, it's interesting about, because I came across a little while ago, there's some mental health setting down in London, exactly that, David, where in essence, they've got a whole host of people together with an interest and actually turn up the meeting. There is no agenda. And that's people what I'm going to talk about, and that then starts to form the agenda. Just that more organic approach rather than we come to talk about these three things. So it's picking up on that point, and there's some really good practice dotted about across the whole of the UK and wider, which I'm sure we could certainly benefit from. That's really interesting, and the outcome seems to be better in terms of commitment, engagement, impact, all those sorts of things. Yeah.
Thank you. Oops, more hands again.
I'm just going to add, because David would be too modest too, this is why having David's expertise is so fantastic, having come from executive career in Tesco, who is a world-class example of being led by user needs. So that's in terms of general expertise and leadership. It's great anyway, but I think it is. You are particularly strong in your leadership on that. So the more we can learn and develop as the patient board, the better.
Thank you. Well, these have to be the last two comments. I think so. Tina first, please.
Yes, so I think there's a real opportunity for us. So putting things right is currently, which is our regulations around concerns, obviously, is being reviewed. It's been up for consultation. There's a real focus on meeting people more than writing to people within 30 days. They're looking at extending the time frames. And I think as an organisation, we're very good at that. We always offer a meeting to everybody, but a focus on, trying to resolve things better. So, but again, it's an opportunity when that's refreshed to really go out with our clinicians, isn't it, around, it's more than just a meaningful apology, isn't it, that we need to give. It's about what can we do differently, help us to make sure that this, because most people when they raise a concern just want things to be better or not for that to happen again, somebody else or them again, isn't it, in the future. So, you know, I think it's a conversation to be more clinically led as well around we've got the solutions to some of this, or let the patients give us the solutions to the problems, isn't it really? So I think that'll be a really good opportunity for us with the way that PTR has been reviewed, because the regulations are so stringent. Sometimes we end up in this kind of straightforward formal process where it doesn't really give patients what they want. Do you know what I mean? Which is an opportunity to change things, and it's very bureaucratic. So I'm hoping that some of that change in the regulations can help us. It's really timely.
Thank you. Thank you. And then lastly for me,
that ties in with the point I was going to make about that real focus into being person-centred. So that it's not just what you say, but it's how you say it and when you say it. It's that side of it as well, and being absolutely led by people who know what they want to hear and when they need to hear it. What makes all the difference. And I would just say, and this goes back to the equality piece really, and inclusion, is it's about also making sure we hear that whole range of voices, because what, you know, it's just part of the population. What suits one particular kind of experience is not going to suit everybody in the same way. So it's about being able to really listen and understand what is needed in a number of different ways, and again not fall into well, we'll do it this way now and that might not suit everyone.
Thank you. It's been a very interesting and I think very useful discussion. And that's why I felt it was important to bring it into the main body of the meeting, rather than it wouldn't be just a matter of raising, but it's part of what we do, isn't it? So it's been extremely helpful. Obviously, I can just refer us to page 8 in terms of these aren't the recommendations of the board, but for the board to note the recommendations, the intentions in terms of taking it forward. So that the 3 little numbers there, the 3 Roman numerals, set out the work that will be undertaken. There's a few dates there as well. Obviously, we'll be monitoring that. But as we highlighted, this is going to be, well, it'll probably be a never-ending journey in a sense, because there'll always be some further improvement as things change, things develop, and different individuals want to interact in different ways. I think what we all recognise, of course, is that many of the patients and the families we deal with, the patients are seriously unwell. They have challenges in their life, and I know we'll be sort of tuning our approaches to the way we suppose engage with those, reflecting the circumstances that different ones find themselves in when they're patients at the cancer centre. Obviously, a different set of circumstances for our donors, and then different circumstances for the public at large. And you, Lindsay, have highlighted, of course, the challenge around the equality, the diversity of different communities, different groups of individuals, real or virtual communities. So there's a lot of exciting challenges here, and we look forward to getting updates as we move forward through this as a board. So thank you for that. Okay, thank you, Tina. Thank you. That's okay. You're welcome to stay, obviously, but do take up that invite. I'm going to move us on now then, and I am behind schedule, I'm afraid. Yes, by half an hour, so we have to do a bit of catching up if we can. So we're going to move to section 5 now. So the first item is 5.1, which is the strategic planning update. Lon's going to lead this. It's providing an overview of key strategic planning matters which have gone through the Executive Management Board and the Strategic Development Committee, and then up here to the Trust Board. And it's here for us to note for assurance purposes. So Lauren, I'll pass across to yourself. You'll take the document as read, obviously, but whatever you want to highlight.
So the first iteration of this report we received in September. So just to remind us, this is an overview of strategic planning matters, and it's something that it's an overview of strategic planning matters. So the items that we've got to highlight are the IMTP update, which is, say, the next substantive sort of discussion on which will be in Strategic Development Committee next week. The work of the newly established, so we've met for the second time last week, Regional Cancer Board for South East Wales, and then the partnership boards that we have with CUMTAF and, we've recently had with Aneurin Bevan and Cardiff and Vale. So attached is, as Appendix 1, is that regional work, and this is an update. So each of the directors of planning in the health boards provide a strategic planning paper every other month to their boards as well. And what the other three DOPs from CUMTAF, Cardiff and AB have been doing is sharing the appendix to their boards to update across the regional programmes of work. So cancer is in there. It's amber red. It previously was red for the last year because the work hadn't commenced, and now that it has and is underway in the way described in the report, the regional board have increased that rating to amber red. So just to sort of orientate ourselves as to what this is the same report that goes out, it is in the 4 organisations board. So hopefully that's helpful going forwards as well. Thanks, Steve.
So are there any comments or questions on this update? Not seeing any hands. So no, okay. Thank you very much, Lauren. I shall move us on now then to item 5.2, which is the Welsh Blood Service Research Development and Innovation Strategy. And we turn to Jazz in a moment to colleagues present the item, and it's a guide to the Welsh Blood Services research activities and partnerships with academia, NHS organisations, funders, industry partners and education leaders with the aim of improving lives of the people of Wales. So this is here for our approval, and as is set out in the summary of the governance process to date, this has been to Strategic Development Committee and also to the Research Development and Innovation Committee prior to coming to the board. So I'll pass across to yourself, if I may, Jazz.
Thank you very much. So I am delighted to talk to this agenda item. We also have Sian James, hopefully on the call, who's much closer to the content of the Welsh Blood Strategy for Research, Development and Innovation. I do remember the first formal research strategy that was developed in 2017, because it was the time that I was appointed into the new role as well, and so paid attention to this. And I think what is great to see is over the last 7 years how research, development, innovation has really been transformed in the blood service. There are over 100 research projects in train, but also the development of the workforce and the expansion of the content of what we're doing. Awards have been won, careers have progressed, and it's really satisfying to look back at this. But of course, we are now looking forward, and just to say, it has been an extremely well coordinated process with engagement of a wide number of internal and external stakeholders. You see through the governance route that it's been to the Research Development Innovation Subcommittee twice. And I think there has been careful listening to what people have been saying, and also an alignment to the existing trust strategy and the blood service strategy. So we are seeking today your approval for this and would be very happy to take any questions. Just to note as well that you've got the strategy and then a number of appendices which include not only the strategy, but then the quality impact assessment and the quality impact assessment action plan. Hopefully those are all visible. I just had somebody questioning whether or not it's on you can access it, but they should have been published together, really.
Yeah, so I've got the cover paper, the strategy, and then I got 5.2.0b, strategy appendices, 35 pages on admin control. I guess those are the ones you're referring to. Can everybody see
But
them?
is the, yeah, because it was printed out for me, but
Right.
there was a query as to whether the
Yeah,
EQIA
I
is.
can't see the
right.
QA, so I will
We'll
go
check
back
that.
Just
and
need to, because it
Yeah.
certainly has been through the governance route for Strategic Development Committee
Yeah.
before it got here, so it might have been missed out.
Okay, we'll check that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so say this has been scrutinised at Strategic Development Committee and the Research Development and Innovation Committee prior to coming here. I just want to ask, does the board have any comments or further questions on the paper? Nick, please.
I just want to commend Sian and the team for the work on this. It's really great to see, and I know there's been tremendous effort and energy put into research at the blood service, which is really starting to make a difference across Wales. So just a commendation from me.
Yeah, useful reminder, Nick. Obviously, there's hundreds of hours of work gone in by many dedicated members of our staff to actually get us to this point, and just a short conversation at the board, but it's all the work that's gone into getting us there. I'll take you first, Anne, if I may, and then Andrew after Anne, please.
Nicola made the point I was going to make, but I know that Alan and the team would seriously tell me off if I hadn't expressed their sincere thanks to Sian for all her support and efforts to get this far. So just note that would be great.
We'll note that in the minutes and express our thanks to you now as well, Sian, and the teams as well. Thank you. Andrew, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank the team and all the work behind this. I think it's just pitched about right in the sense that it's not claiming to change every aspect of blood research in the world. It's actually focusing on key developing expertise, component development, and so on. And really using that as a base for growth and advancement in those particular areas. And I think it will land well with partners, frankly, because it establishes the research with the WBS as a group which are outward looking. There are the sort of national and international partnership ambitions here. A group that can be seen as a sort of trusted partner in research, actually, that it's a really good basis for growth. So I'm very happy to commend this.
Okay, thank you. That's useful. Thank you very much. Any more comments or questions? If not, the board is asked to approve the Welsh Blood Services Research, Development and Innovation Strategy. Happy to do that? Yes. Yes, seeing nodding heads. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we're going to move us on to item 5.3. So this is the Welsh Blood Service. This is a business justification case for the fleet replacement. Obviously, there's a fleet of vehicles managed by the Blood Service, and this has already been through Strategic Development Committee, endorsed for approval by the board. That's the governance route by which it's arrived here. Now, I did welcome Alan at the start of the meeting. I discovered that Alan wasn't able to join us. We need to record Alan's apologies rather than include him within the attendees. But I know that, Anne, you're going to speak to this in Alan's absence. Thank you.
It's reasonably straightforward. The case is here for approval. It's, as you say, it's been through the governance thus far. I have one apology to make. The QIA has been completed. Signed it off.
Yes.
We just don't seem to have it made it onto the admin control, so we need to circulate that in behind the scenes. So apologies for that. But I think you'll read from the documents that there's quite a lot of thought, effort, and energy that has gone into preparing the case. It's quite a detailed case, and there have been many conversations with Welsh Government, and they are expecting the business case. And they also view it as a critical business case for Welsh Government.
Okay, thank you. Nick, please.
Yes, just to make the board aware, because I definitely recall signing this quality impact assessment off, and the impact of making this fleet replacement change was overwhelmingly positive, with quite a number of adverse outcomes in the event of us not replacing it as we would surmise from, from having aged vehicles.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Lindsay, please.
Yes, just one. I mean, I think it's a very clear case and really important that we're supporting it. I think just the one question for me is that it's right as what we need to do now, but it's just thinking, what does that lead us to as this fleet expires, if you like, down the line? So actually, by doing it all now, I know it's over a 3-year period. It's intended to be. But is the planning in place about what that means in terms of fleet renewal in the future? Because it would suggest to me that we're going to need to do it in quite a tight time frame again down the line. So if we're doing it every 6 or 7 years for all of them, depending on what the renewal needs are, it's quite a hit to take again down the line. It's not as if we're doing some every year over that 6 or 7 years. We're doing years, and I can see why we need to do it now. It's just more about the consequence down the line.
Yeah, I think your question really is about phasing, and I think there's also a question about sustainability going forward, and there's quite a number of things that are probably in the air in terms of what those vehicles will look like in the coming years. I think the team have been very mindful of that, and they've tried to factor as much of that into the business case as possible. We will need to think through those things as options become available to us.
I think it's just about making sure decisions we're making today aren't creating problems for us kind of 7 years down the line. That we've thought that through and we've got a sense of what our planning would need to be around that as well.
Thank you, Lindsay. So this item is here for a business justification case, which is here for approval by the board. Is the board happy to approve that? Yes, thank you very much. Right, I'm now going to move us into the consent items and just to clarify or confirm that items under consent are considered routine trust board business items and are considered as single agenda items, and I will go through them each in turn. However, members of the board can ask for any item to be removed from consent if they wish to have a fuller discussion on that particular item. So can I just check if there are any items in consent? I can see Gareth's hand up to say I do have one I'm asked to be taken out of consent, which is point 1.3, which is the Alder House increase of rent. And Gareth, you have some wish to there, yeah?
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Fyswn ni'n hoffi tasau item 6.1.2 yn dod mas o'r eitemau cynllunio hefyd, os gwelwch yna.
So Mike just broke up again, so I didn't hear.
6.1.2.
6.1.2, Gareth. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, this broke up very slightly. So that's my 6.1.2 we're going to take it, and 6.1.3. Are there any other items other than those 2 items you want to take out of consent? If not, we'll go firstly then. I'll come back to all the others after we've taken the ones out of consent. So firstly, Gareth, you had a question, query or comment on 6.1.2, commitment to expenditure exceeding the chief executive limit.
Ie, diolch Cadeirydd. Mae'r cwestiwn yn ymwneud â'r dyddiadau sydd yn papur sy'n cyflwyno hyn. So rwy'n edrych ar dudalen 3 o 4 yn paragraff 2.2 ag mae'n dweud fyna table below provides a summary of the decision sought from the September 2024 meeting of the Trust Board. Felly dwi ddim yn deall y dyddiad yna. Ag wedyn ni, yn y tabl sydd o dan y paragraff yna, mae'n dweud fod dechrau yr gytundeb ar y 1 o Awst 2024. Felly, ydw i yn iawn yn meddwl fod y gytundeb yma wedi cael ei arwyddo yn barod, oherwydd bod y dyddiad dechrau ar y 1 o Awst, ac hefyd wedyn ni ar dudalen 6 o 9 yn yr atodiad, mae yna gyfeiriad at WBS will begin procuring once board approval has been secured. A mae'r dyddiadau sydd yn y tabl yna ar dudalen 6 just ddim yn gwneud unrhyw synwyr i fi ar y funud, achos maen nhw'n cyfeirio nôl at dechrau yr procurement yn mis Medi llynedd, ac bod y cytundeb presennol wedi dibynnu ar yr 11 o fis Gorffennaf 2024. Felly dyddiadau ddim yn gwneud unrhyw synwyr, a wedyn ni yn ola ar dudalen 9 o 9, mae yna dabl yna sydd yn cyfeirio at yr cyrff sydd wedi cymeradwyo hyn, a does dim unrhyw ddyddiadau yna pryd cymeradwywyd cynnig yma.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. So the three comments / questions is, the first one is around, related obviously 2.2 on the covering paper. Get that up. So that was paragraph 2.2 and the reference to the September board meeting, and then cross-referencing that to the dates set out in the table below. So again, I'm not sure how best to address these, because I'm not sure whether colleagues are going to have to go off and check on these things.
I think so. Yes, but I think the governance route for this paper is set out in the cover paper for the this item.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if that's helpful, but I think on all of the matters, and we need to go back and and check with Alan's team.
So obviously if these things need to be checked, where does this leave us in terms of this paper? Is it something we can't
answer? Right.
I can't answer this.
Okay. Okay, so we'll have to, so we can't approve this now. We'll have to, but obviously we can't wait 2 months to the next board meeting, so we're gonna have to do this out of board. Yeah, okay, thank you, Gareth. So will that cover off, if we address all 3 issues out of this meeting, Gareth? We're gonna, none of the colleagues obviously don't have that detail here, and none of them want to, of course, make a stab at answering it without having the facts, because that wouldn't be correct. So they're going to have to go off and just establish the facts of the matter. So this particular one, we're going to withdraw, and we're going to have to review and take out of board meeting as a out of board action. Thank you on that. The one I had was 6.1.3, which we have checked, but I just wanted to make the board aware that we had checked this. This is the what's described as the Alder House increase of rent, and this is a shared service matter, but obviously we host shared services, so all the contracts come through us. And I'd raised a query, I can't now find, around the it was there it is. So this is on the old 6.1.3 paper, where it was seeking basically approval of an increase in annual rent. But the paper was describing that the revised annual rent effective date was the 10th of December 2023. So my initial thought was that a typo, and it's December 2024? But then reading on further, it becomes clear that it was the 10th of December 2023. So we have queried this with shared services and
Andrew Nash is
Andrew
on the line.
Andrew Nash. So that's very helpful. Yeah. So it was in my note that Andrew might be able to help us. So Andrew, I believe that you're on the line. So I know you've written or sent an email into Non with an explanation for this, but it would be helpful if, for the purpose of the board meeting, if you're just able to explain the position in terms of the date being now almost a year ago, and just clarify for the board. I know it's been through your own governance processes as well, so if you just explain what those are as well, please.
I'm afraid, from what I understand, Andrew can't hear us. Currently, he's online, but he can't hear us. I have a brief explanation.
Okay, then, yeah.
But I would rather it were coming from Andrew, I must admit. So my understanding is that the review period was noted in the original agreement, and that the figures didn't come back and the numbers didn't come back until later on. And once Shared Services had those numbers, as you'll see from the cover paper, they have taken it through their own internal governance, concluding in the Partnership Committee meeting last week, which is why it's here today. That's my understanding from colleagues.
It's just a small comment. I wasn't good to raise it, but since it's out of consent, it'd be really helpful, Ian, because it's a public document, to know what Alder House is used for. I mean, it's just an introductory sentence. I maybe should know, I don't, but I mean, this is a substantial rent. You know, it's absolutely a critical facility, which I assume it is. Would be useful to know. Just as an introductory sentence, it kind of goes straight in and says there's an increasing rent on Alder House. So a little bit of a lead-in would help. And I think on one of the others, that's
Thank you. So just on this point, I don't think we're going to get an update, do we?
They are trying everything they can upstairs to help Andrew. I don't think he's online, but I will liaise with Andrew and we'll make sure that we have an answer for that. Andy.
Yeah, but in terms of the board, obviously this has been through their governance process. They've obviously satisfied themselves, but I thought it was important to ask the question, and they have provided an explanation. And this was, just remind us, when was this signed off? You just said by
on the 21st of November.
21st of November.
Partnership Committee.
Their partnership.
Andrew is in now.
Okay.
He's actually in.
Okay, Andrew, if you're able to hear us, Andrew, we've just raised the question, which I know we've corresponded on. You've corresponded with Non around.
I actually corresponded with James Quantsa.
James, okay. Just in terms of the effective date is the 10th of December 2023, which is almost a year retrospectively. So we've just, Non's been endeavouring to give us her interpretation of the explanation. But I don't know if, Andrew, if you're able just to confirm to the board why there's an apparent 1 year delay between the rent review and the paper coming to the board. And I know it's been through your governance as well.
Yeah, the rent review was December, and it was a rent review that was based on RPI uplifts. So there was a formula. The existing rent, we applied RPI uplifts for the previous 5 years, and then you arrive at the new rent. We didn't get notification of the uplift from the landlord for a few months. So we started paying the new rent once they did that, backdated to last December. It was agreed by Shared Services Finance. They went through the calculations to agree that the RPI had been calculated and applied correctly. And then they sent us this rent review memorandum. So they always come in after the rent review date, and rent reviews are nearly always settled after the date in any event. So it's not unusual.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. That's very helpful.
Okay,
that's good. Thank you. Before you disappear, I just want to check if there's any comments or questions on that. Oh yeah, I don't know if you heard as well, Andrew. Just one comment from board colleagues that be helpful to know the purpose of the building, just so we can get in our head, you know, not necessarily you have to tell us now, but
sure,
you know,
yes.
The function of the building when we have the rent review, just so we can, because we're familiar with our own buildings, but
yeah,
less so
it's the main shared services office in North Wales, really. So it's in St Asaph, and it's the main base. So it's an admin function.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Okay, again, thank you, Andrew. I'm just going to double check. No further questions or comments. If not, that's fine. Thank you for your support with that.
No problem. Did you want me to stay around for, there's another one I think which I was involved with somewhat, which is the Charnwood Court lease renewal?
That hasn't been raised as a question, but I'm about to take us through every item, so we'll just go through them. If you just want to bear with us, it'll only take a few minutes, so if you're happy to hang on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so, Matt, sorry, Matt.
Apologies, can I go back to the one that was Gareth was raised, just to give a little bit of clarity on the confusion on the dates, but obviously we will still do the
okay, yeah,
because if you actually read the papers, it does tell you in the detail in the papers that what they're using is an NHSBT framework. The framework is not something that we set up. That's something that's set up by the National Procurement in England with this, the blood service there. So the start date of the 1st of August is when that framework was renewed. There's also a statement in the cover paper saying our procurement team identified a breach. Standing Order SFIs, a file note which will be reported to the audit committee, because there has been a gap between the ending of the contract that Welsh Blood had used the previous framework, but they hadn't then renewed it. So the dates, you've got a mixture of dates which are describing the NHSBT framework, when that was being set up and how long that was taken to set up. Then you've got our piece of procuring off that. Why it's confusing, but there is a gap, as Gareth is pointing out. It is being reported to the audit committee as a file note, which is a proper process. So we can do an out of committee, but it will probably just say what I just said. Ultimately, there's a gap between the ending of the old contract, file note. You've got to obviously continue to have supply on this company, clearly, because you can't not have the supply. New contract will then go to take off this framework, the new framework. Got a mixture of things going on.
So can I, sorry, this is, if you bear with us, Andrew, we need to go back an item to 6.1.2.
Yeah, no problem.
Gareth, I just want to check out, obviously we've heard Matt's comments, and I don't know whether, as chair of audit committee and as the colleague who raised the question in the first place, whether you are content with Matt's explanation now and that we can deal with the discrepancy through audit committee, or whether you're still of the mind that we should provide further information to the board and that we need to take approval outside of the board, after the board. I just think your views on it, Gareth, really.
Yeah, diolch Cadeirydd. Dwi'n clywed beth mae Matt yn ddweud. Dwi ddim yn fodlon ar esboniad llafar fel yna. Dwi'n meddwl bod rhaid i'r papur fod yn mwy cywir nag mae e, ac sy'n well da fi dys ni yn cael diweddariad i'r papur a bod ni wedyn yn trin y peth allan o'r cyfarfod pan fydd y manylion yn gywir, os gwelwch yn dda.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. That's very helpful. Thank you. Okay, so we'll stick with the decision that we're going to withdraw item 6.1.2. We thank Matt for the verbal update. But
you know, because I just wouldn't have done my duty.
No, absolutely.
Because my name's on it.
No, that's right.
I've been through it and I had.
So yeah, so we'll do some more work on the paper so it's clearer and obviously can reflect. Perhaps it does already reflect your comments, Matt, but these can be drawn out. So we're going to withdraw item 6.1.2. I'm going to take that outside of the board. So if there are no other items people wish to withdraw from consent, I'm going to take us through each item in turn. So we've got the first section, which are consents for approval. So under 6.1.1, we're asked to consider and endorse the chair's urgent action taken between the 20th of September 2024 and the 21st of November 2024. And there was one item that was considered under chair's urgent action, which was the Albert Green Infrastructure Programme business case. So we have to, this says, sorry, it is to endorse chair's urgent action. I'm going to move us on unless I hear any objection. We've withdrawn item 6.1.2. We've been asked to approve the increase in annual rent for lease contract at Shared Services Old House St Asaph. This is 6.1.3, and Andrew has helpfully guided the board with the assurance in terms of the questions it's raised. So we're happy to approve that. Similarly, 6.1.4, the board is asked formally to approve the lease extension and to sign and seal the lease on behalf of Shared Services in respect of an extension of the lease for Charnwood Court, which I think is that next door to us here, or
Across the road.
across the road, something like that. Yeah, are we happy to do that? Thank you. So,
Mae'n flin i fi cadeirydd, sorry, mae'n flin i fi just un pwynt o gywirdeb. Mae'r papur sy'n cyflwyno, sorry, I'd better say this in English for Andrew's benefit in case he's not got the translation.
I don't have the translation.
But I just know
I live with three Welsh people, Welsh-speaking people, and so I would struggle. Though I think it's best if you do it in English, if that's okay.
All right. Okay. No, that's fine, Andrew. It's just that I noticed in the cover paper, it refers to heads of terms in the appendix, Andrew, whereas in fact, I think it is the counterpart lease that's in there. So it's just a minor point of detail, but that shouldn't avoid us approving it.
Okay, thanks. I think both were supplied, but the lease is the more fuller document, obviously, than the heads of terms.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So I'm going to take that as approved. So then going to move us on to 6.1.5. So we got 4 trust policies for approval. These are either amended or new. So it's the Welsh language policy, the managing attendance at work policy, the NHS Wales flexible pensions policy, and the NHS Wales respect and resolution at work policy. And we've been asked to approve the amended / new policies for adoption within the organisation. Thank you. And then 6.1.6, amendment to standing orders, Schedule 3 annual review committee, terms of reference. We've been asked to approve the revisions to the terms of reference and the operating arrangements in respect to the Transforming Cancer Services Programme Scrutiny Subcommittee. We can approve those. Thank you. Then we have a number of items which are consent for noting. So under 6.2.1, there's approved policies updates. We've been asked to note the policies that have been approved during the period of October 2024 to November 2024, as set out in the paper. We're happy to note those. Thank you. We've then got 6.2.2, 6.2.3 and 6.2.4, where we were expecting to receive highlight reports from Audit Committee, Strategic Development Committee and TCS Scrutiny Committee. Unfortunately, the situation is that those highlight reports were not able to be produced in time. I don't know, Non, whether you want to comment on that at all. We've obviously had a discussion, so I'm not proposing to open up for conversation. No. Obviously, workload, capacity issues, etc. But we all understand the importance of getting these highlight reports to the board. So I can only apologise to the board that these highlight reports weren't available, and they will be distributed as soon as they are, and we will obviously bring them back to the next board meeting in 2 months' time so that they are part of the public record. Move us on to 6.2.5, the Joint Commissioning Committee JCC summary report from the 15th of October. We're asked to note the content of that. Also asked to note the content of the NHS Wales Shared Service Partnership Committee assurance report of the 19th of the 9th, and then also the Shared Services Partnership Audit Committee highlight report on the 15th of the 10th. Then at 6.2.8, we asked to note the content of the Trust Board Seal Register for the period 26th of September to the 27th of November 2024. So that takes me to the end of the consent noting agenda. There's a hand up over here. Sorry, Matt, you're sitting in the one position where I can't see hands. I don't know if that's deliberate or not, but Matt.
It's just, I'm not sure whether this is feasible. I'm just thinking of that last discussion, and it may not be just 100 gig papers, where we have consent if the papers have gone out in sufficient time. And a member of the board has got an issue and they want to put it out in consent. There's particular issues. Is there a way of them being shared? So obviously my name's on stuff. But I have not got the detail. we might be able to solve some.
Of course, yeah.
Or at least come with the educated person from Welshwood or Cancer Centre, wherever, and be present. Because otherwise I'm not doing justice, to be fair to papers or anyone else for that matter who might. I don't know whether that would be feasible, but it all depends on whether people's websites, obviously, and then members have got time to read them. Feedback.
And that's the two issues here. I mean, papers are typically out in time, but we're back then to the ability of different and individual members to read the papers in sufficient advance to raise these issues. So clearly, if colleagues have read them and have concerns, then
maybe not make a formal process, but if someone's got them, I think I'd rather have emails coming.
And certainly it's practice I follow. The several queries I've had over the past week have fed in, such as the older house one. That was fed in a couple of days ago. But obviously, it's down to people, colleagues' capacities to read the papers.
We can't make it formal then. Let's just say if people have got time to send an email.
Indeed, but obviously this is the formal opportunity to raise it. But if people can raise it before, then as you say, it's better to get those answers up front rather than find themselves in a position having to go away. Yeah, absolutely. Fair point, Matt.
And in doing so, if you can also let us know so that we can help manage the agenda and make sure that the chair is aware that items will be taken out of consent, it would be really helpful.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Matt. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so that gets us to the end of the agenda. We did have one item of AOB, but we've already covered that. So just to assure the board, I was going to be asking Carl and colleagues just for a verbal update on the attendance at the PAPAC meeting, but more appropriately, thank you, Lindsay, we've actually covered that off in terms of the reference to it in the chair's report much earlier on in the meeting. So I've got no other items of any other business. I'm not proposing to take any. So I'm going to draw the meeting to a close in a moment, but just to advise, the next public meeting of the Trust Board will take place on Thursday, the 30th of January 2025, I presume at 10 a.m. I'm going to draw the meeting to a close now, so I'd like to thank colleagues for your contributions today. I'm going to call the meeting to a close, and so doing, I ask the board to adopt the following resolution: that representatives of the press and other members of the public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting, having regard to the confidential nature of the business to be transacted, publicity on which would be prejudicial to the public interest in accordance with Section 1, Paragraph 2, Public Bodies Admissions to Meeting Act 1960, Section 67. So I'm going to draw the meeting to a close. Just before I do, just so it's on record, the matters that the board will be discussing in the private Part B session are as follows. We'll have the minutes of the previous Trust Board meeting. We will be considering the new Velindre Cancer Centre Major Capital Scheme delegation, the new Velindre Cancer Centre and Enabling Works contract approvals. We'll have a verbal update on the COVID-19 inquiry, and there'll be papers on health technology Wales scope of activities, the infected blood inquiry update, Chair's urgent actions report, commitment expenditure exceeding Chief Executive's limit, and private committee highlight reports. Having set out the items to be discussed in Part B, I'll now formally draw this public meeting to a close. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.